the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good evening to you. It is Petrie here with you for the next 3 hours, and of course coming up at midnight it is your chance to talk back. And I do want to talk to you, I want to talk rubbish to you, not for the first time. Some people may be shouting at the radio or television, but I do want to talk about this because waste management the record highs now in fly tipping, and we've all seen the news stories, haven't we, of those massive dumps turning up at the side of motorways or in farmland. But this is now such a regular occurrence, especially if you have farmland. The farmers have been complaining about this, is that these rogue people, these criminals, will go house to house, door to door, and say, I can take your rubbish away for you, give me 50 quid or whatever. They then pick up all the rubbish, and rather than taking it to a proper official tip, they will then just go and dump it somewhere, sometimes even on the same street that they've picked it up from. So, and by the way, you're responsible for that. If it is discovered that you paid somebody to take that rubbish away, then you get the fine, not them. And this is the problem, is that these people are incredibly difficult to catch. But why is it that so many people, these numbers are absolutely flying now? Why is it that so many people have a problem with household waste? What's going on in your area? What happened? I mean, you either have to have a car and drive a long way to a tip, or you have to pay the council to come and pick it up. Now, luckily, I'm in a position where I can afford the 30 quid for, 10 items or whatever it is to come and pick it up. But there are a lot of people who can't. A lot of people who are living in flats that don't have space to store things until the council can come and pick it up. So while it is the responsibility of individual households, and I will never, it's never the right thing to do just to dump things, I kind of understand it. Because if you need to get rid of stuff, what do you do? How do you do it? And what would be a better system? What would be a better way of doing this? Because this is costing councils millions and millions of pounds across the country. It's also costing individuals, like I said, farmers, thousands and thousands of pounds a month to get rid of the waste that is just dumped on their land. So what is the problem, and what is going on, and why is it happening? Has it happened to you? Have you got into trouble for it? What do you do when you have a problem? Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. The calls are charged at national rate. We do call you back. And text the word talk and your message to 87222. And this as well is on the year or the month or the day that we learn that food waste collections, which is going national, going all the way across England. A lot of councils are not ready to pick up food, and I'll tell you about food. I can't bear it. I cannot bear that food waste thing. I tried it just all summer, just battling maggots. It was disgusting. So I completely understand if you don't want to do that either. But there you go. So we're going to be talking about that. John Boothman is going to be joining us. Love John. John Boothman will be joining us to go through the papers at 11 o'clock. We're going to be talking to John Misek about the Trump State of the Union address that he did this morning at 2 o'clock this morning. We've got a bingo card. Actually, I had 4 bingo cards that I was playing, and not one of them, and I didn't win any of them. But all of them were filled up, but not to the top. But I'm going to be talking about that, and then, of course, talking about waste management and this record high of fly tipping and how responsible we all are for it. But first, a bit of politics, I thought, to kick us off this evening. The Metropolitan Police has apologised to the Common Speaker for inadvertently revealing that he was the source of information relating to Lord Mandelson's arrest on Monday late in the afternoon. Now, it's understood that what happened, how Sir Lindsay got this information, was that he was in the British Virgin Islands last week, and somebody gave him information that Peter Mandelson was planning to go there, right? So he felt it was his duty to report that Peter Mandelson was likely to skip the country. But what he wasn't expecting was for his name to be mentioned by the police and then make it into the media. We've actually got a clip of Sir Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker of the House of Commons, speaking about, this is just before PMQs, how he passed information on Peter Mandelson.
Members will be aware of comments in the media regarding the arrest of Lord Mandelson. To prevent any inaccurate speculation, I'd like to confirm that upon receipt of information that I felt it was relevant, I passed this on to the Metropolitan Police in good faith, as is my duty and responsibility. It is regrettable this rapidly ended in the media. As this is a live investigation, members will understand that it would not be appropriate to make any further comment, and I'd like to caution members from doing so.
So there you go. He was the person that told the police. Well, Lord Mandelson's lawyers complained about the Met's decision to arrest him on Monday as part of its probe into misconduct in public office allegations. They say that he had already agreed to an interview next month, and the decision to take him into custody was prompted by a baseless suggestion that he was planning to leave the UK. Well, here to discuss this and more politics of the hour is Kevin Schofield, political editor at the Huffington Post UK. Kevin, good to see you. Have you dobbed anybody into the police recently?
Not that I can remember.
Right. Well, just be careful because you'll get reported. This is an extraordinary story.
Indeed. It's absolutely bizarre. And one of the other bizarre elements of it is that the Lord Speaker, who is Lindsay Hoyle's equivalent in the House of Lords, Lord Forsyth, he was initially in the frame for doing this. There was a mix-up. It seems as though the Met detectives, when they were inadvertently informing Lord Mandelson, who had reported him, said it was the Lord Speaker, not the Common Speaker. So last night, the Lord Speaker had to put out a statement, understandably, saying this is completely untrue. I had absolutely nothing to do with it. And we all thought, that's a bit strange. Why? Where does this come from? And then we learned today, obviously, that it was actually the Common Speaker. And it's just an absolutely bizarre story. You know, he was in the British Virgin Islands last week. It was recess. Not clear why he was there. Presumably on parliamentary business, as it's a British overseas territory, perhaps. And he heard from a source, he says, that Peter Mandelson was allegedly planning to abscond. And then he felt it was his duty to inform the Metropolitan Police, who then carried out their own inquiries and felt there was sufficient evidence to move in quickly to arrest Peter Mandelson.
Or at least sufficient likelihood, right? I mean, it only has to be the likelihood of somebody absconding.
Exactly.
So I don't think anybody can blame the police in this, apart from this extraordinary leak. And apparently it was down to the desk sergeant or the intake sergeant or whatever you call it. I've not spent much time being arrested, but that actually wrote it down, and that's how Mandelson's lawyer found out.
Yeah, exactly. And he obviously informed Lord Mandelson, who then were told after his release and getting his phone back, he texted a journalist, a friend of his, about what had happened. And then, that's where it came out that he said it was the Lord Speaker who had informed the police about him. The whole story is just such a mess. There's so many different strands to it. It's absolutely quite incredible. And who knows where it's going to go next.
Where would this leave Sir Lindsay Hoyle in the eyes of his flock, if you like, in the Commons? How will that go down?
Well, actually, MPs who have gone public on this have said, he was duty-bound to inform the police if he believed he had reliable evidence or reliable information, at least, that this was going to happen. Then he, as the Speaker of the House of Commons, had no option other than to inform the police. Now, did speak to one or two Labour figures who, let's say, aren't massive fans of Lindsay Hall, who were maybe less complimentary about it. But yeah, I think MPs themselves feel that, you know, given his lofty status, he did the right thing, and then it's up to the police then to do with that information what they will. And obviously they decided to go ahead and arrest Peter Mandelson, which came as a huge shock, not least to Peter Mandelson, who had arranged already to go in voluntarily to be interviewed by the police about it sometime in March.
And when we look at Peter Mandelson, we did all think it was very strange, didn't we, that an arrest happened that late on in the day. We were talking about it on this programme, saying that, you know, with Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, they made sure to arrest him earlier in the morning so that they had the whole day, that they could question him and then release him. So it was already a bit unusual, wasn't it, to see an arrest at that time of the day?
Yeah, and not least the fact was as well that they had already conducted searches of his properties and concluded them. The difference being with Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was that they arrested him and then carried out the searches. So the question is, well, why would you need to arrest Peter Mandelson if you've already basically gone through his personal belongings in the search for evidence? But you're right, the timing of it was very strange, because it inevitably meant that he was going to be in prison, or not prison, in the police custody until at least the early hours in the morning, and perhaps overnight. And as it turned out, he left, I think, around about 2 a.m. yesterday morning.
Yeah, it's also it's a very strange story in as much as well. If I was going to abscond, and like I said, my criminal past is not really that colourful, but if I probably wouldn't go to the British Virgin Isles, where there's an extradition treaty, where it's British territory, right? I mean, some of this doesn't add up.
No, it doesn't. I think, yeah, if he had that in mind, you would have thought he might have gone somewhere, as you say, where there was no extradition treaty. That would make
more sense.
More sense. And obviously, you know, going on the run would just be such a bizarre thing for someone pleading their innocence to do. Not least considering who he is and who he used to be. You know, the ambassador, cabinet minister, a Labour peer. You know, the idea that he would abscond does seem pretty far-fetched.
It really does. But look, he's had his passport.
His lawyers have said it's fake.
Yeah, but he has had his passport removed. He's had his passport taken from him, and he's now he's out on bail. And I was learning this earlier on today, that gives the police right to do things like take passports and things like that. Whereas Andrew Mountbatten Windsor isn't out on bail. He was released after questioning. So there is a subtle difference here, isn't there, in the way the two men are being treated on the back of this you know, seemingly credible information that Mandelson was getting to do a flit.
Yeah, exactly. I think Andrew Mountbatten Windsor has been released pending further investigation, which is you're right, it's a subtle difference between that and being released on bail. And I think it's fairly standard for the passport to be removed. I guess if you think they suspect that the person may well be a flight risk of some description, I guess given the circumstances in which they decided to arrest him, they've maybe decided to err on the side of caution and take his passport off him anyway. But I really don't think that fleeing the country was ever Peter Mandelson's intention. The real mystery is who this source was who told Lindsay Hoyle that was the plan. But it's just completely bizarre. It's
completely bizarre. I mean, the police as well. I mean, they've shot themselves in the foot to a degree, haven't they? If they're hoping that sources in any criminal case would step forward at any point now, for fear that their names are going to be revealed. I mean, this is a real backward step for the cops.
Oh, it's a massive own goal by the police, and obviously they're under massive scrutiny and under massive pressure. Not least, you know, pressure from the public, I think, given the huge public interest there is in the Jeffrey Epstein case, the Peter Mandelson controversy, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. the police are under an awful lot of pressure to get this right, and it's not a great start, is it? If they inadvertently reveal to a suspect's lawyer who informed them on the suspect, it doesn't fill people with much confidence that they can go to police with information and not have to worry that their identity will be revealed.
Talking of the Epstein files, and it seems like every day there's something new that comes out. In as far as Epstein potentially having a say in Andrew Mountbatten Windsor getting the job of trade envoy, there's now speculation that's what happened, is that Epstein pushed for his pal to get that job. What impact does all of this information coming out have on Sir Keir Starmer, who's already on the back foot with this? He seems to have escaped the last sword of Damocles that fell, but there's another one being hoisted, right?
Well, there's a by-election tomorrow in Gorton and Denton. Obviously, if were Labour to come third, for instance, behind the Greens and Reform, or Reform and the Greens, then that would obviously be very bad news for him. I don't think it would be fatal, but it would be another huge blow, and he would limp on to the elections on May the 7th, when that might well be the final blow for him. But yeah, these headlines about Peter Mandelson are really the last thing that Keir Starmer needs, and it feels as though we're almost in March now, and the beginning of the year feels like a very, very long time ago. But that was supposed to be another reset, another point at which Keir Starmer was going to get back on the front foot, turn a page on what was a pretty disastrous 2025, get more on the domestic agenda, tackle the cost of living, etc., etc. And there are things happening. The energy bills, the energy price cap is coming down, so that they do have a good story to tell in some areas, but it's all just been completely drowned out.
But that's not because of any political levers that they've pulled, is it? The energy price cap going down, that's a global supply issue, and I think this is again that people are becoming more savvy to politics and say, well, why are you taking credit for that? It's not really up to you, it's not really down to you.
Well, I think this is partly, to be fair, Rachel Reeves in the budget announced that she'd be taking green levies off bills and moving them into general taxation. So on the one hand, your bills are coming down partly because of that. But then if it's going on general taxation, that means the government's still got to find the money from somewhere, which may well mean tax rises or cuts to public spending elsewhere. So yeah, so I think they can claim a bit of the credit, but you're right, they're not getting any benefit from it whatsoever. I think it also feeds into this feeling of cynicism that the public have towards politics and all politicians. Now, Keir Starmer wasn't even involved in politics. He didn't become an MP until 2015. So when Andrew became trade envoy, he had absolutely nothing to do with it, although it did happen under a previous Labour government. So again, there's this notion that, this is Labour, they kind of look out for their mates and they're in it for themselves rather than the public. And that, again, is a very damaging charge that for Keir Starmer and his party to try and guard against. But you're right, the whole thing is fascinating over the circumstances in which Andrew, as he was Prince Andrew at the time, became the trade envoy. I think it was 2001. I think the suggestion is that Peter Mandelson pushed the then Prime Minister Tony Blair to do it. Now we know that he was friends with Jeffrey Epstein as well, and the whole thing is just so murky.
It just feels like puppets were being placed into powerful situations, right? That's what it feels like. That there's this whole game of elites behind our backs, reorganising the world for their own benefit.
Absolutely, and one thing you can say about Jeffrey Epstein, apart from the fact that he was a horrible, disgusting paedophile, is that he was a consummate networker. He seemed to have, from the documents that we've seen released thus far, he seemed to have, as you say, Petrie, all these incredibly powerful people dancing to his tune, and that would perhaps even lead to Prince Andrew becoming a trade envoy, because you can understand why that might be beneficial to Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
personally. So, yeah, it does seem as if there is so much more to come out on this story. I think we're only just scratching the surface right now. I think there's going to be...
I completely agree, but Keir Starmer must be hoping that there's no more on Mandelson, right? I mean, we have to say that neither Mandelson nor Andrew have admitted anything. They've declared that they are completely innocent of all wrongdoing and that they're only being questioned about misconduct in a public office, not the sex trafficking or anything to do with that. I just have to make that clear legally. But nonetheless, as you said, we're at the foothills of this. You know, how much more can come out about his pal Mandy? You know, it looks worse and worse every day for him.
Well, it does, and we know that the government are now bound by a vote in Parliament to reveal the documentation surrounding Mandelson's appointment as US ambassador. So there's that still to come out. That could be potentially very embarrassing. We don't know what is in some of these messages between Mandelson and the Prime Minister, Mandelson and other cabinet figures, civil servants, etc. We've also got the police investigation now. That is going to go on for quite some time. That's going to keep bubbling up. It will go away for a while and then it will come back again, and it just dredges up the whole story. And you know, Keir Starmer can't get away from the fact that he was the guy who appointed him ambassador to Washington. You know,
and it looks like he did it at speed and cut a few corners as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, his chief of staff, Morgan McSweeney, he carried the can and resigned, said, well, I was the guy who advised it, so I should take responsibility. But Keir Starmer was the guy who actually made the final decision.
Absolutely. That doesn't wash with us either. We're going, well, now, hang on a minute. We know that Morgan McSweeney was a sacrificial lamb here.
Yeah, exactly. And ultimately, I think Keir Starmer will be held responsible for it, either by his party or by voters.
As he should be, as you and I would be if it was us. Kevin, always great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Kevin Schofield there, political editor at the Huffington Post UK. Quick break, back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie here with you through until 1 o'clock, and at midnight, of course, it is your chance to talk back. So really hoping that you do that, because I want to talk to you about this ridiculous situation that we have at the moment. And for me, there seems to be very simple solutions to this, but I'd just love to hear from you on that. And that is why there is so much fly tipping in this country. And a lot of it is domestic waste. Now, that is also, like I have said, it is our responsibility to get rid of this waste effectively and legally. But I also don't blame people for not being able to afford to pay the council to come and pick it. God knows how much we spend on council tax as it is. And all of those council tax bills are going up and up and up and up and up. It is absolutely criminal, actually, and we get less and less for it. With my council, you can pay to have them pick stuff up. I'm in a fortunate position where I can afford to do that. But not everybody is. Not everybody has got 30 quid to get rid of that mattress. Or a car. Well, mind you, most mattresses don't go into cars. Well, I've got a Mini. So it's not really very much I can get into. You'll be surprised how much I do get into it. So what do you do? What do you do? You know, if you're living in flats, you might just walk that mattress around and dump it on the street somewhere. If you're, you know, making sure there are no cameras seeing you. If you've got loads of household waste, you might just take them out in black bin bags and dump them on the street. And I mean, obviously that is the wrong thing to do. But I'm just asking the question, what else do you do if you don't have the resources to pay for somebody to come and pick it up, and you don't have a car to be able to book an appointment like I have to do now, and then drive for 40 minutes each way, not very green, not saving the environment, in order to get rid of any rubbish that I might have. So the whole system seems to be just not working. It just, and council spending millions of pounds clearing it up. There's got to be a better way than letting these criminals go around. We're looking there, if you're watching on television, at that big dump site next to, I think it was the M40, I think. But anyway, next to a motorway. And look at the size of it. And that is criminals who are picking up waste from you, or charging you a tenner or 20 quid or whatever it is they charge, and coming around and picking up waste and taking it away. And they're saying that they're going to get rid of it properly, but they don't. They just dump it in places like that. I mean, I remember one time when I was doing up my garden, and I had so much waste, right? It was so much waste that I really didn't have the time or the energy to lug it all the way through the property and put it on the street and pay the council to pick it up at 10 items at a time. So I had to pay somebody to come and pick it up. And I had to make sure that it was a licensed collector, that it was, you know, all of these things to make sure that I wasn't breaking the law by passing money on to these people. And it cost me over £300 to get this waste picked up. And a lot of that was cardboard boxes from when I moved. 300 quid. And I did think at the time, I thought, oh, it's just another really massive expense to make sure that they're licensed. But that's what licensed people cost, right? That's what they cost if they're going to get rid of it properly. A lot of people can't afford that. A lot of people don't want to afford that. You know, 300 quid on having your garden cleared of rubbish, or a nice cheap, you know, 2 weeks in Spain. You know, that's people are going to go, well, stuff it, I'll just dump it, or I'll just pay somebody who's a criminal to come and pick it up. I don't care as long as it's gone. So the whole system seems to be geared towards enabling criminality. And there's got to be an easier way. There's got to be a better way. So I want you to give me a call. I want to talk about this and see if, you know, our simple minds can figure out what councils have absolutely failed, completely failed, dereliction of duty to figure out. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good evening to you. Well, the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, DEFRA, has today announced that fly tipping incidents across England have reached the highest level since current records began, with most offences continuing to involve household waste. That's you and me. Last year, 1.26 million fly tipping incidents were recorded, with an increase of 9% on the previous year. Only 0.2% of cases result in court action. Well, there's a problem right there. Meanwhile, over a quarter of English councils are set to miss an official deadline to introduce weekly food waste collection, so yet another bin for you to fill, to all homes. The new weekly food waste collections are set to start next month under new England-wide legislation, but 79 councils told the BBC they would not meet that deadline due to delays in new specialist vehicles. I have a real issue with food waste. Well, listen, joining me to discuss this issue is Tony Earnshaw, who's the Chief Executive of a UK commercial group. That's a national facilities management company. Good to speak to you, Tony. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. This is becoming a real nationwide crisis, isn't it? The amount of rubbish that people are just not able to get rid of or not willing to get rid of legally.
Yes, it is. We have tipper vehicles around the country. We collect waste on behalf of councils, landlords and private residents who want to recycle and get rid of their waste. We have a waste carrier's licence, which enables us to remove waste from premises and take it to places and legal routes to dispose of this waste. I don't think it's people wanting the consumer or the person getting rid of the waste, wanting to get rid of it illegally. I don't think a lot of the time they know it's being taken away illegally. You have people advertising on social media, these organised crime gangs, and they might, for instance, get a quote from us, and it could cost £50, say, to take away that waste. But then they might think, well, that's quite expensive, and as you've just been saying, spending £50 on something that you class as waste, which really should be taken away for free. It means nothing to you, this waste. You think that's a lot of money, and it is a lot of money to some people. When somebody comes along on social media and they offer you to take it away for £10, you're going to think, well, this is a bargain. Now, I think we need a lot of education around this, because if they do come to you on social media, when they do come to collect your waste, if you ask them for a copy of their waste carrier's licence, for a receipt with their address, their work premises, that protects you, because if somebody is taking away your waste, and it has letters in there, boxes with your address on, and it's disposed illegally, them fines can come back on you also. So I think there needs to be more education around getting rid of your waste and making sure you're checking the waste carriers. But also there needs to be a lot more done from the council and environmental agencies as well, because it's quite low risk for these criminals and quite a high return and quite a high yield, because they're dumping this waste on sites that have been left abandoned, or they're doing it at night where it's basically under the cover of darkness, and they're collecting this waste throughout the day and dumping it illegally and just leaving it in places sometimes of outstanding natural beauty, and it's destroying our countryside and our towns and cities.
But you say that a lot of people are duped, if you like, into having waste picked up. But also, we're just seeing images there of a guy driving up in his car, opening the boot and chucking black bin bags into a pile of other black bin bags. That's somebody who's doing it personally. And certainly I live in Shepherd's Bush, but certainly around me, people, just if they've got a mattress to get rid of, they just prop it up against a wall in the dead of night at the end of my road or at somebody else's road. And my council's pretty good at clearing up this environmental waste. But you cross the road into Ealing, and the council there, the streets are strewn with rubbish. I mean, literally one street to the next, and then they don't appear to be as on it as my council does. So it's not fair on a lot of people who try to do the right thing, right?
I think it does differ from council to council, and there is local places where you can take your recycling, your mattresses and things like that. Things like mattresses are a little bit harder to get rid of, like gas bottles. Yeah. Because they're big and they've got metal in, they've got springs, you can pay to get that disposed. But two things. So the first thing is large-scale incidents last year cost England £19 million. If these areas were policed properly, we could save that £19 million. And the consumer, the people who are actually, I mean, it's the wrong word, but the people who actually get rid of this waste could benefit from a small amount of free waste being taken away by your local council. So that money could be reused and recycled, which should be getting done. But also, I think sometimes if you see these people dumping it out the back of a car or dumping it, sometimes they are the people who are actually collecting the waste. They might not come in a deckled truck. In fact, a lot of the times they won't come in a wagon like we do with the signs of our company on. They'll come in a car. They'll come in a van that's just a white van or a black van. They don't want to be caught by the authorities. They don't want to be seen. They want to look like they're an everyday person. But these are actually the organised gangs on a smaller scale, and the criminals who are raising millions of pounds a year to feed other types of criminal activity on the back of this. And it's becoming worse. I mean, you can see the pictures on your screen. That's an app. There's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of tons there of waste, which cost the council, I think that site itself, what you're looking at there, it's going to be £20 million to clean that site up, which is crazy amount of money.
Wow.
But there is more things we can do.
Farmers are paying thousands of pounds a month, aren't they, to clear, to get rid of waste that's just dumped on their land as well. But it is a question of what more can we do, because particularly, I mean, there's a council that's being talked about a lot at the moment. That's Brent Council here, happens to also be in London, where they've started to turn the tide on the amount of waste that's being dumped in the streets by householders by offering community skips and things like that. I just don't understand why. In Australia, for example, it's quite a day out on a one Sunday a month. You drive around all these neighbourhoods and you see all their waste put out onto the street, all the chairs and sofas and mattresses and things like that, and people go around and take them if they want them. It's a recycling day out. What's left behind is picked up by the council. That's got to be cheaper than having enforcement officers, having, you know, all sorts of other admin, if you like, around waste collection. If you just say, look, here's a skip, put it in that.
I mean, these skips are quite an ugly sight. I'm not sure I'd want to walk around my neighbourhood and see.
But they wouldn't
waste.
be there for long, right? Yeah. If you say, look, they're there for, you know, first 3 days of the month, every month, stick your stuff in there.
I don't think that's the solution. I think the solution is to empower the Environment Agency, empower the councils. Their budgets for the last 10 years have been depleted. Only recently, the council in Birmingham nearly went bust, and they've been on strike for years. The local authorities, and the bins haven't been getting taken away. So I think more, and a lot of these criminals, you know, like you said, 0.2% got caught. Very rarely do they go to prison. Very rarely do they get fines. There isn't enough enforcement around it. If the laws were much stricter, this wouldn't be happening. It will be happening on a much smaller scale. And like you say, we can save over £19 million a year, which we can put back into the system and offer free collections for people who haven't got a car, for the elderly who can't get there and can't afford it. I think it can be organised better from the top, and it needs to be organised better from the top. Local farmers, a lot of the time, they burden that expense themselves because they have acres and acres of land. They can't physically monitor every single piece of that land at all times of the day, and especially when these criminals are coming with huge truckloads of waste, and it takes them 2 minutes to get onto the land, to tip that waste off, and before you know it, they're gone. And it's pitch black, there's no lighting, it's in the middle of the countryside, there's no monitoring, there's no cameras, and before you know it, they're away with it. Now, I was watching the news earlier, and I think it's a brilliant idea. They're talking about naming and shaming people on social media who get caught for these things. I think also we could do more around with using AI with things like registration recognition to find out where these vehicles are coming from, who owns these vehicles, because they've got to be registered to somebody. Also, they're talking about putting GPS tracking in commercial waste. So there is lots of other things we can do. And also biomass is a very good solution. So what biomass is using things like food waste, and you use that food waste and you bury it underground, it creates heat, and then we get steam from that, and then we can turn that steam into electricity. Now, we can sell electricity, and again, we can create revenue from that, and we can pump it back into the system and recycle that money to get this waste crisis under control?
Well, that's the other thing, isn't it, with recycling. I do recycle. I draw the line at food, especially in the summer, because it's frankly disgusting. And I have a thing about maggots, so I'm not having that. But you know, we do recycle, but then we're told that this all goes into landfill, and so it makes it feel like even if you're trying to do the right thing, that the wrong thing ends up happening to it.
Well, it doesn't always go into landfill, and actually landfills are becoming less and less. In fact, Scotland are talking about closing all of their landfills very soon. I'm not sure that's going to work. However, a lot of these go to recycling centres, and what I do in my house, for instance, is I have a bin, and in that bin I have a green section, and I also have like an orange section, and there's two different areas to that bin, and one side is where my food waste goes, and one side is where all the containers from that food waste go into. So we clean them out and we put them into the recycling side. Now, that makes it very easy for me because I've got two compartments to then take it to the end of my drive and put them in the correct bins for when weekly refuge come and collect it. And I think food waste is, I think it's a good idea, actually. A lot of local councils have a deadline of the 31st of March of this year, which many are going to miss. However, it is a good idea to recycle our food waste. And actually, you're saying you don't like recycling your food waste, but you actually probably do without you realising, because I imagine you are putting your plastics in one bin and the remains of your dinner in the other bin. It would just mean making sure that no plastics are going in that bin and only your food waste goes in that bin. And again, that food is going to go away, and rather than going to the landfill, it will go into biomass sites. We need to build more of them, but these biomass sites will create electricity.
But you're looking at the whole of England going to be recycling their food waste. Where is it all going to go? Because these biomass sites that you're talking about are not up and running yet. I mean, there's some that go in Wales. When I lived in Wales, I recycled food, and that all went to local pig farms, I think. Places like that. But where is it going to go? I mean, this is the thing. If we're being asked to do this, if we're being asked to put ourselves out and go through this, you know, recycling, dividing things up. Some councils demand that glass, paper, you know, everything is split and you've got 7 bins. If we're doing that, we want to know if it's doing any good or where it's going, or you know, because otherwise it's just we can't get on board with it.
Well, I think the reason they're asking you to put your waste in a separate bin is one, so they can dispose of it much easier. It is much easier to dispose of food waste, but also so you're not mixing your plastics and mixing your other waste within that food waste, and then you will naturally recycle more. Yes, some of it will go in landfill, but a lot of it won't. Like I said, a lot of it will be reused for many different things, including animal farming and including biomass. And recycling has got to be the solution. I know Europe are on top of it a lot more than we are, but recycling things like your papers and your plastics and your woods, again, is very easy to do. But again,
a lot of people don't have the space, though, Tony, do they? I mean, a lot of people live in flats; they don't have the space.
They don't, and they don't have the space for 3 or 4 or 5 bins,
no.
And they haven't got that. So we need to think outside the box and try and find a solution. But also, these big corporate companies need to look at the packaging as well, because everything we do creates a lot of waste.
Yeah, there's the packaging. We can't be held responsible for everything. Tony, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Tony Earnshaw there, Chief Executive of UK Commercial Group, a national facilities management company. Stay where you are. We're going to be talking about the State of the Union next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good evening to you. This is Talk and it's Petrie here. So we're going from talking rubbish to the State of the Union speech. No link, obviously. No pun intended or link intended. But the US President Donald Trump this morning, our time, 2 o'clock actually our time, delivered the longest ever State of the Union address. It was nearly 2 hours, 1 hour 47 minutes. Trump's combative remarks to praise the work of fellow Republicans and outlined his future agenda. He insisted that the US economy was performing well and the country was bigger, better, richer and stronger than ever before. Yet his popularity has fallen significantly since his inauguration last year, and his party is facing midterm elections in November where they're expected to lose the House of Representatives and possibly even the Senate. And if that happens, then all bets are off for Donald Trump. Well, joining me now to discuss this is John Misek, who's a politics editor at masslive.com in Boston. Good to speak to you again. It's been a while, hasn't it? I think last time was Charlie Kirk, was when Charlie Kirk was shot.
Good evening.
Good evening. OK, so we've had lots of Republicans abroad talking about how marvellous this speech was for Donald Trump. What did you make of it?
I watched the length and breadth of the hour 47 for work last night, Petrie. It was a very Trumpian speech. He punched up his achievements. He punched it down at his opponents, and was trying in the midst of it to bring Americans on side at a time when polling shows, as you mentioned, that they're bitterly divided in his policies. What was kind of interesting about it started out as a very run-of-the-mill State of the Union speech, the recitation of the achievements, bragging about the economy, typically reaches sort of a crescendo until he says, "My fellow Americans, the State of the Union is strong," which is what you tend to expect from this speech. About an hour in, though, it took a bit of a turn, and a very Trumpian kind of campaign speech emerged. He began slapping Democrats in the crowd, scolding them, calling them corrupt, calling them crazy, took an unusual shot at the U.S. Supreme Court justices who were sitting just in front of him. Your listeners probably know that last week the High Court shot down the Trump tariffs. He didn't take that at all well and has promised to impose new and more sweeping tariffs under a section of U.S. law, and claims that he can do it without congressional authorization, although there is some question about that. Democrats have been admonished by their leaders to sort of protest silently. But when Trump attacked Somali immigrants living in Minnesota, Representative Ilhan Omar, who is of Somali descent, represents that community, yelled back at him. So too did Representative Rashida Tlaib, who was sat next to her. We had a lot of Democrats last night skip the ceremony entirely to attend alternative programming on the National Mall. And Trump continued through these attacks. There was also the standard array of celebrities and honored guests in the House gallery, including the U.S. men's hockey team, who just come off their gold medal winning round in Milan Cortina. A great deal of controversy surrounding them as well. And then at the end of the speech, he veered back on script. You could tell that he was very clearly reading from prepared remarks. It was a very sort of weird crescendo up and down kind of speech last night.
What was interesting about it, though, I think he pulled off something really quite smart, really quite clever. Whether it was his idea or not, I don't know. And that is when he said, "Please stand up if you agree that the first role of a US president is to protect his people as opposed to illegal aliens." Now, everybody on the Democratic side would naturally agree with that, I assume. That it is the first job of the American president to protect the American people before protecting illegal immigrants or aliens or whatever he calls them. But of course they didn't stand up, and that visually gives the Republicans a stick to beat them with come the midterms, doesn't it?
Oh, that was by design.
Yeah,
I think Trump knew the Democrats weren't going to stand up.
No, that's why he asked the Republicans to. Yeah.
Right. It put him in a box, and it's going to be the visual, as you said. It's going to launch 1,000 campaign ads in the midterm campaign season.
Yeah. so that he's going to be able to say, look, see, the Democrats don't care.
They hate America. Look, I asked them to stand, and yeah, they didn't.
Yeah. Another interesting point that I was reading today after Donald Trump's speech was that they think he's fallen into the trap of making the same mistake, actually, as Joe Biden had made. And that is by telling the American people that they're better off than they feel. And that could really seriously backfire. To keep going on about, look how great we're doing, look how marvellous it is, where people's health care is being, quadrupled, the drugs bills are going up, everything is going up. That's how they feel it anyway. That he could have fallen into that trap.
Absolutely. What was really striking, even as he was bragging about, say, the prices of eggs coming down, the prices of beef beginning to descend, and energy becoming less expensive, there was never that moment where he sort of and you wouldn't expect this from Donald Trump anyway, where he would say, I understand how you're feeling. I understand times are tough. I understand that we're trying to do the very best we can. He instead argued, well, the stock market is high, and the stock market's not the economy. Most Americans have nothing to do with the stock market. There's 54 Americans without any retirement savings whatsoever. The president broached a plan there. There's a question whether or not he can do it or not. But it was very telling that he didn't say, you wouldn't expect Trump to say, I feel your pain. But that would have been a moment for him to do so, even if he's talking about lower prices, because most Americans don't feel the same way. The polling indicates that. The interviewing indicates that.
Other things you always notice with Donald Trump is almost it's what he doesn't say that is more important than what he does say. Obviously, no mention of Epstein, although that's the biggest story in the world at the moment. So that was completely ignored. Greenland seems to have slipped off his mind, having been told you can't have it. So Greenland has disappeared. There was very little, I felt, there should have been more on the bombing campaigns outside of the United States to try and convince the American people, the electorate, that actually these external things he's doing are good for them. There seems to be quite a lot missing from what I'd expect from a State of the Union address.
Yeah, the Iran thing was particularly striking. Petrie. I mean, it is the president's base, their children, their sons and daughters, largely who are going to be called to serve.
Exactly.
If there is an American military strike, presidents traditionally, as we know, build up public support for that. They build up international support for that. Trump is not a believer in bilateralism by any stretch of the imagination, so probably doesn't feel the need to build that case. It's funny you should mention that. I had a colleague ask me last night to keep an ear out for any mentions of higher education or public schools.
Yeah.
There was a brief mention of school choice. Every parent cares about better schools. Every parent cares about higher education opportunities for their kids. They care about student loan costs. But that, too, was largely missing from the president's remarks last night.
But who was he appealing to? I mean, he didn't even mention the midterms. Who is he appealing to? Because if he's just appealing to the MAGA that would vote for him, as he said, even if he walked down the street and shot somebody dead in front of them, they would still vote for him, then it seems he's already got that audience, right? He's already captured MAGA. He doesn't need to recapture them, but he always seems to be appealing to the same people as opposed to trying to broaden his base. Would that be fair?
I think you're absolutely correct. I think it was a speech to the Republicans in the room. It was a speech to his electorate watching at home, to the extent that those people were. There was not any outreach, nor I don't think we would expect to independents or those, that share of the electorate that could very well turn the midterms for him. You said at the top of this segment, it's very likely that the Democrats will retake the House. They now seem to have an outside chance at recapturing the Senate as well. So if the president was feeling that pressure going into the speech last night, he certainly didn't betray it. It felt very much like a speech for the base, and we know that he is a person who feeds off the reaction of the crowd. So when he started getting that raucous applause for his attacks on Democrats, he just kind of sort of fed him a bit more.
In terms of heading into the midterms, does he know how unpopular he is at the moment? Are people telling him that? Because sometimes you get the impression that he hasn't got a clue.
I am sure he's being advised of that. I'm sure he can read poll numbers just like everybody else does. As we know with this president, you never say you're wrong, you never say you're sorry, you never acknowledge bad news, and if there is bad news, you dismiss it as fake. And that has been his MO for this last decade or so. But certainly he has to know the political stakes of this election. He certainly has to know if Democrats retake the House and if they retake the Senate, that is pretty, as you said, pretty much game over for his domestic agenda for the last 2 years of his presidency.
Yeah, it'll be done. It'll be stopped, even if he's not impeached. That'll be it. But
correct.
Just briefly, what can we expect to see from Donald Trump going forward? Are we going to see any changes in language, in how he says what he says, or is he just going to keep playing to that base?
He's not changed. We know, American voters know what they're getting with Donald Trump. He was out again today, going campaign style. He's again, Petrie. This is a guy who goes on attack. He goes on offense. And I don't think he knows any other way. You would not expect to wake up tomorrow and to find a changed and different Donald Trump. American voters know what they're getting.
Yeah, and already we're seeing places like Texas turn. It's really absolutely fascinating. John, thank you very much indeed for joining me to discuss the State of the Union. We had a bingo cards, actually, and I think that we did pretty well, although there were some things that we thought he'd mentioned that he didn't, and that's one of them was Hillary Clinton. The other one was the ballroom. He didn't mention his ballroom. He gets bored with things quickly, doesn't he? And he didn't mention Gavin Newsom. There you go. Stay where you are. Papers next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and a good evening to you. It is Petrie here with you until... I was going to say till midnight. I've got all my timings wrong. I didn't get any sleep, by the way. So I'm here until 1 o'clock. Coming up at midnight, it is your chance to talk back. And what we're going to be talking about is, you just heard in the news there, this 9% rise in fly tipping, and most of it is household waste, except that only 0.2% of people, criminals, are caught and punished for this. So I want to know from you why it's got so bad and what on earth can be done about it. I mean, I think, personally, I think that councils put too many bars in the way. It's almost, I don't know, I mean, I'd hate to say it was deliberate, but they make it very difficult for people. You know, the local council to me used to be 5 minutes away. It's now a good 40 minutes. And if there's traffic, God knows, I mean, in London, it can take an hour for me to drive my car to the tip, where I've got to have an appointment. So if I miss that appointment, I can't go. So if the traffic's bad, you know, all of these things. And then I've got to drive home with all the stuff in my car and make another appointment. So I think that things are made much more difficult than they should be for the public. And although it is our responsibility to take care of the waste that we have, is it always that easy? What do you do? How do you do it? I mean, look, fly tipping is illegal, it's wrong, and it's morally bankrupt. But I kind of understand why some people feel they've got no choice but to do it. How are you supposed to get rid of a mattress you don't want? Or, you know, if you're getting a new fridge and they charge you 50 quid to take away the old one. Now, as I said, and it's not boastful, I'm just saying that I know that I can afford to pay that 50 quid. Does it gall me? Yes. It really hacks me off. But I do pay that money and have it taken away. But if you can't afford that money, if you're on your uppers and you're buying a fridge on tick, you know, and they say, look, it's 50 quid to take the old one away, you can't even afford to buy the fridge, let alone get rid of the old one. So this is why people fly tip, I think. But anyway, I'd like to hear from you. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at national rate, but we do call you straight back. And text the word talk and your message to 87222 and let me know what goes on in your area. Maybe you've got a community skip, maybe you've got a way of dealing with this. But at the moment, this is just becoming so expensive for councils to deal with this, and there's got to be a better way. And I'm sure that you and I can come up with it. So do give me a call. That's all coming up in just under an hour's time. But before that, I'm absolutely thrilled and delighted, as I always am, to introduce you to John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. John, how are you?
I'm good, yeah, it's good.
Good.
Getting lighter in the mornings.
We had
nice.
Sunshine.
Yeah, well, we haven't gone that far yet.
No,
right?
It is Scotland.
It's been okay, right? The weather's been pretty good, you know.
We had actual sunshine today. It was really creepy. Anyway, John, I don't know what the system is in Scotland. Do you have to pay to have waste taken away? What do households do in Scotland?
I've been sort of following a wee bit of this. I mean, I think it'd be fair to say that there's a bit of a postcode lottery about this. You know, there's some places where these things are really good and well organised. I think kind of Scotland would be up there, you know, kind of doing quite well in this, because there's, you know, although local authorities administer these schemes, whether it be for domestic waste or right through to fly tipping. I mean, I can say that I've got, I think it's about a mile away, there's a recycling centre where you can take all sorts of stuff. Cooking oil, old fridges, old mattresses, cardboard, the whole bit, and you just drive in. You don't need an appointment. They ask you to bring, though it's never been checked to my knowledge, some identification that you live in this particular council area, and you can then, you know, just put your stuff in, put your stuff away, and it gets segregated almost at that point.
Yeah.
I watched a really interesting report earlier on this evening, in fact, on television about a different kind of waste, not fly tipping, about food waste, which said that a whole number of councils in England weren't doing what, you know, perhaps they should, right? But in Wales, they had a very comprehensive system.
Yeah, they've been doing that for years. I had to do it when I lived in Monmouth. They had a really good system. Yeah.
Yeah, most areas, that you have a wee bin that you can have in or outside your kitchen where you put the food waste, where it gets picked up every week, and it then went through the process by what happened to that. Some horrible sludgy stuff produced at the end, but that can then be used, I think, to burn, create energy in power stations, right? I mean, it was all really interesting to me, but it went on to say that in, I think, a whole number of areas in England that this system just didn't exist. So I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that councils probably don't have the money they have. It's certainly been the case in recent times, even with, certainly where I live, that there have been charges introduced for some stuff. So, the garden waste, I think, gets picked up every month, but you have to pay a charge now for garden waste. And
you have to pay for everyaging in England.
Yeah.
I mean, literally.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, we have to. I mean, we don't. If I go to the tip, which tragically is literally one of my favourite things to do, but if I do go, there used to be a local one, much closer to me. But now it's a 40-minute drive across London, and that's a commitment, right? And I have a car, so I can do it. But a lot of people don't have cars in London. A lot of young families don't have cars in London. A lot of people living in blocks of flats don't have cars in London. So, how do they get rid of stuff? And I don't think councils make it that easy. Again, in my borough, you can order a collection of up to 10 items, but you have to pay. You have to pay. It's not, I think it's fairly reasonable, it's 30 quid. But again, I can afford to pay that. And I begrudge doing it when I haven't got 10 items, right? It annoys me. I think that's my Scottish blood. I need to make sure I've got 10 items to get my full money's worth. But if not, then you're paying 30 quid for one item to be collected. A lot of people can't afford that. And I was just saying, if you're buying your fridge on tick, on credit, then that means you haven't got the 50 quid to have the old one taken away, right? So I don't think it's made easy for people.
No, I think you're right. But again, I think, part of this just depends where you live and how good your council is, how well funded your council is, how well organised your council is. I mean, one of the things that I've found amazing is, again, watching stuff in the past few weeks about, particular places in the country where it's almost like there's been some kind of industrial tipping of waste, where you get, I mean, there's a couple of places that I can't remember where it was like a river.
Yeah, that's
right,
the one that's going to cost £20 million to clean up.
But you have to ask the question, right? How has it managed to get to that actual position? Right, this is clearly something that's been going on for a long time. It's systematic. How is that being policed? How is it? And of course, my reading of any of these stories was that the people who were getting landed with bills were the people who owned the land. In some cases, poor farmers. Where you're like, well, what's it got to do with them?
Yeah, it's not their fault. And also these environmental police that go around, they're checking for addresses on paperwork or on boxes or on things like that, or on prescription bottles, and then they go to the household and they fine the household, and these are massive fines, even if they've paid somebody to take it away, because the person they've paid to take it away was clearly a criminal. So, you've got to ask for a licence, and if you get a licensed rubbish collector, they are very expensive, because they have to pay then to get rid of your waste.
I don't know. I mean, you just feel that this could be better organised at the end of the day, right? You just feel that, as I say, that, local authorities have the responsibility, but, I sympathise with local authorities across a whole number of things. Principally, it's definitely been the case in central government has stripped local authorities of, more and more cash over the years, and their ability actually probably to raise cash as well, whilst at the same time piling more and more responsibilities on them. And I suspect, again, this is, another another situation where local authorities have been victims of that.
Yeah, well, I certainly think with the food waste, that's been an extra burden for councils, which is why they're not ready, because actually they need specialised vans to pick up food to make sure that it's all safe. So that's an extra cost.
I mean, the amusing thing, if I can say this, is just like how many bins you end up with. You know, you've got a food bin, a general bin, you've got a garden waste bin, we've got a blue box for paper, we've got a green box for plastic bottles, and we've now got a white kind of bag thing that you put, no, the white bag things for plastic bottles, and the green things for the green boxes for like wine bottles and ordinary bottles. So you end up, you need to have a kind of fairly sizable house.
Well, you have to have your own,
the number of bins.
Yeah, your own recycling centre outside your house, and a lot of places in cities and towns as well. They're not just one property. You know, you'll have a 3 or 4 story house with 3 or 4 flats in there, and each flat will need, you know, 5 bins. I mean, how does that work?
And also big sort of industrial size bins outside the front of tenement flats, which well, I mean, it looks pretty crap, to be quite honest.
It really does,
right?
And it's ugly. It's really, really ugly. They try to introduce loads of bins around by us, but I think there's too many houses that aren't houses anymore. So like I said, you'd end up with 4, 5, 10, 15 bins outside of one house. It's just, and nobody's got a garden, right? So so then it becomes a disaster for the streets as well. So there's got to be a point at which all of the responsibility isn't on us. You know, manufacturers should be making sure that then food manufacturers should be making sure about food packaging and things like that.
Well, again, that's another big issue, isn't it? I noticed something earlier this week that Amazon were going to try and reduce the packaging that, you know, that they put anything in that comes to your door. I mean, I always find it quite amazing that you get these sort of things arrive at the door, and you get this kind of sort of twice the size of a shoebox, right, to hold something that's absolutely tiny inside.
Yeah, I know, and you get this massive box and one thing in it, and then all that crunchy sort of funny paper stuff that they put in there as well. We can't, you know, I do understand that we are ultimately responsible, but I don't think we're to blame, if that makes sense. You know, sometimes people just can't get rid of stuff that is coming into their home.
Though there is a thing, though, which is, you know, I mean, if you go away at the end of the day and you examine how much comes into your house and how much leaves, right, you know, you probably find there's a lot more coming in and lying around the place than is actually going out the door.
Yeah, I'm brutal though. I love a good clear out. That's my favourite thing to do. I've just done it with wardrobes. Got rid of so much stuff. It's just the best feeling in the world. I am tragically a very sad person, John. John, we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be back in a moment with the papers.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And with me is John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. John, let's start with The Sun, and this BAFTA storm is still going on.
Yeah, well, I mean, will this go away? Who's responsible? Who's getting the blame?
Yeah.
Absolutely fascinating. John Davidson, the guy with Tourette's syndrome on whom the film is based, suggesting that there was a microphone placed too close to him, and people, the organisers, should have recognised that something like this was likely to happen.
Yeah, it is an interesting, because whoever is to blame, John Davidson isn't. Right, his Tourette's, he's not to blame for whatever happened. Right, that is something we have to accept, and it's a real shame that he's being vilified in the US for this, and saying that was outrageous, and what came out of his mouth was outrageous. He also once told the Queen to not so politely go away, right? So we know that this is not his fault, right? But honestly, why weren't the guests at BAFTA told, warned, all those celebrities and things? Why was he put near a microphone? Because had he been a man with a disability in his legs, they'd have made sure that there was a ramp and there weren't steps next to him. So this guy has this Tourette's, which means he shouts out outrageous things. They had a duty of care.
I think there's all sorts of questions that can be asked, and I think I saw somewhere else tonight that the Director General of the BBC wants an investigation into what happened. I'm bound to say it's taken quite a long time to get there.
How unusual for the BBC to mount an investigation.
So yeah, but an interesting intervention from the guy at the centre of the whole row.
Yeah, I mean, I feel for him, because he's really being vilified in the States. There's a lot of people that are saying this is disgusting, this is disgraceful. He must have been thinking it, even if he didn't mean to say it. Complete lack of understanding, because the film, I swear, hasn't been released in America yet. So nobody's seen his story, so nobody knew who he was. So BAFTA had a responsibility to him, and so did the BBC.
Well, again, looking at the event on television, you could tell, at least I thought so anyway, the two actors who were making the announcement at the time were kind of completely puzzled and shocked.
Completely shocked, as they would be.
And I'm sure if given an explanation afterwards, they would probably be the same.
But if they had been given an explanation beforehand, if they'd all been told, look, we have somebody with Tourette's, this is a condition that he can't help, and what he says, what comes out of his mouth is not what's in his head. But for people to understand Tourette's, I suppose that's really difficult, which is why I Swear won so many awards.
Well, I think what we're saying at the end of the day is that if, proper arrangements at a whole variety of levels had been put in place, this need not have happened.
Absolutely. Like I said, if he had been in a wheelchair, they'd have made sure he didn't have any steps to have to go around. They just didn't take it seriously enough. So that's the Sun. The Times. Oh God. The Epstein is really the gift that keeps on giving, that you just wish would just go away, isn't it, really? Epstein used the UK as a hub to traffic scores of women.
I think some of this arises from the complaints and the intervention of the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown,
he's really got his bit between his teeth, hasn't he, on this?
Yeah, I mean, he's told the authorities, I think, that there were 6 airports which were involved in this this claim on the front page of the Times that the UK was a hub to traffic scores of women. We know, it's a really brilliant piece of work by the Times, clearly going through the documents. We know that women from Eastern Europe were trafficked, as far as we're aware. We know which airports they might have gone through, and a great deal of work has been done to actually get to this stage in this story. But as I say, I think Gordon Brown's intervention is just really, really significant across the whole thing.
Yeah, he's been amazing, and also with Mandelson, of course, who he feels personally slighted by. But what's interesting though is that the RAF bases that were used, including Northolt, which is not far from me actually, in West London, which is quite an important airport, but they do take in private planes. Private planes do go through there, but apparently the RAF only keeps records for 3 to 6 months.
I think it
3
is,
months, yeah. Which seems unlikely, to be honest, knowing how much the armed forces love paperwork, documentation. But so they won't have any records of the private flights that went through.
No, that again, another interesting facet of this whole story.
Yeah.
You would have thought, the Ministry of Defence would want to keep records going back a period of time of what was coming in. Well, private jets and military jets as well. Because
of national security.
Yeah.
If nothing else, I mean, at Northolt, I've only ever landed at Northolt in a military aircraft, so it's probably a different area to where the private planes land, but it's still a military base. Right, you would hope that they would keep those records because you need to know if there's been spies going in and out of there or whatever. It's odd to me.
I think so. But look, there are so many bits of this whole story that are kind of odd. But it's just, it's the story that keeps on giving. There's more and more revelations every day. We haven't gone through all of the documents yet. No. There is that whole fascinating thing about, the people who've been at the sharp end of anything that happens in relation to it, notably Andrew Mountbatten, Windsor, and Lord Mandelson in this case. We've yet to see similar movements, similar situations in the United States where, you would imagine there's a lot more names and a lot more people, right, who went a lot more times to Epstein Island and were involved with Jeffrey Epstein than ever were here.
Yeah, absolutely. But it seems that America under Donald Trump doesn't have the appetite to prosecute. Todd Blanche, the Assistant Attorney General, said there's nothing to see here. There's not enough evidence to go after anyone. And even though I haven't seen all 3 million, I've looked at quite a few, people who've been reporting this, and I'd say there's definitely enough evidence. I'm not a prosecutor, but I would say, well, that could be looked into a bit further, but they don't seem to want to do that.
Yeah, but look, there's no denying that, it's definitely had some impact. The story keeps going. The stories of the victims are now being told in, pretty graphic detail in the United States. And, it's probably, it is about time that actually happened. There's more and more names being associated with it. And I think it's having a big effect on public opinion in America. And not just that, it's certainly, been responsible for what I would regard as the biggest splits in the MAGA movement, Marjorie Taylor Greene, for example, and also has given huge ammunition to the Democrats who, for the first time in a long time, look as if they're getting their act together. Part of that is obviously because of the midterm elections coming up in November, but it looks as if more generally it's something that's kind of catalysed something in the Democrats who've been pretty moribund, to be honest, since Trump was elected.
Yeah, I tend to think that the arrest of Mountbatten Windsor and the questioning of him and Mandelson will prove to be a significant moment in the entire Epstein fiasco. I think that their arrest and questioning, although I have to say only on misconduct in a public office, they've not been questioned about any of the sex trafficking or any of those allegations, certainly at this stage. But it looks like it could put a crack in the dam, because Americans are now looking at this and going, well, hang on a minute, the Brits have arrested a prince, so why can't we arrest a congressman, or a senator, or a businessman, or things like that? So I do think that when we look back on this, that this will be quite a pivotal moment with the arrest of these two men and the questioning of these two men.
I think it's really significant. It's also the case that you have to remember that there's other states where individuals are involved, certainly some in the Middle East have been named. It's also the case that in Norway, for example, a member of the royal family has been implicated, at least in some of the claims and allegations around about this. And there is just so much more to come.
Yeah.
We're reading, tonight about, we've seen the stories about Bill Gates. There's just it's starting to percolate through.
It really is, yeah. And I do, because I've always been very worried about nobody being held to account for this. And if the entire system around the world has to collapse, then it has to collapse. This cannot be allowed to pass. But I've started to, or I don't know if it's because I feel spring coming and I'm a little bit more hopeful, but I feel like that there might be some justice for these women, girls and boys. I do. I have a tiny little slither of hope. And of course, Trump's not going to be in position forever.
No, that's right.
One way or the other.
Yeah, look, you're entirely right. There is a real sense that, this story is moving. And the other thing about the story, it is one of these stories which is just utterly unpredictable.
Yeah.
And because it's utterly unpredictable as to the direction of travel, then what happens is, it can just burst out, explode, in a different place about a different individual on any one day, and you literally don't know what's coming.
It's because it's so big and so pervasive around the world, and so many very, very, very powerful people involved in it. But you're right. I mean, even just what Gordon Brown has handed over could lead to a whole new line of questioning around the world. So it could just be that one spark that explodes this. Let's have a look at the nice picture story on the front of the Times. There is Paddington Bear. The Queen and the West End actress Marisha Wallace met Paddington at Windsor Castle reception. This is the person who played. No, it is Paddington. Really is Paddington Bear on the West End.
Knows a lot of celebrities, does Paddington. Who can forget the Queen and the tea?
Oh, that was brilliant.
And the sandwich in the handbag.
Yeah, that was so good.
It's just a really good picture there on the front page.
It really is a lovely, lovely picture. And then for those people who are thinking, oh, thank goodness that the rain is over, welcome hay fever. This is the other story on the front page of the Times. We can't be happy for 1 second in this country without somebody ruining it.
I'm always amazed at how stories about the weather are just amazing, and just really how interested the British public are in stories about the weather. I've always had this real fascination for that. One of the stories I was reminded tonight, one of the stories that I was involved in, I don't know if you remember this, but in 2010, the then Prince of Wales and Camilla came to the BBC in Glasgow and read the weather forecast.
I don't
know if you
that.
Ever remember that. You should go and look up, go and Google it.
I will.
After you're finished. It was an amazing story. They read the weather when they came on this visit, and I have never seen a story travel like this in my life, because the following morning it was in every programme in every Commonwealth country. It was all over America.
Wow.
It was an absolutely huge story. And again, Scotland has been the fount over the last 30 years of some very, very big stories, many of them tragic. And yet this particular story, which was kind of a very, very soft story, travelled round the world and backwards in a space of 24 hours like no story I've ever seen.
Oh, I'm definitely going to look that up, definitely. Well, anyway, if you suffer from hay fever, It's because of tree pollen, because it's now kicked up all the tree pollen. So there you go. Sorry about that, but enjoy the sunshine. Quick break with John, and I'll be back in just a minute.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it's Petrie, and with me the fabulous John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. The Mirror, John, don't let hate win. Now, this is Keir Starmer's message. We are in Purda, and Ofcom is very on it, more than it is with the papers. The people will be voting tomorrow, so we can't really dig into this story in the same way that the papers are able to, because of voting privilege and all of that. So we're going to just brush past that, but basically it's front page of the Mirror. And like I say, papers can do an awful lot more with this than we can in broadcasting terms. But let's have a look at the Daily Telegraph. Really good front page, I think, the Telegraph for tomorrow. Some really excellent stories. Let's start with this one. The Met exposed Hoyle. We were talking about this earlier on the programme as a source of Mandelson tip. So basically, he'd been to the British Virgin Isles for whatever purpose, and heard somebody told him that Mandelson was planning to do a flit to there, and he told the police in case they needed him to be in the UK. And Mandelson is fuming about it.
Yeah, well, it also appears to be very embarrassing for the Met. Some of the other papers are reporting that the Mets had to apologise for, I think the term was inadvertently revealing that the Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, was responsible for telling them
this. Well, they
this.
originally said the wrong Speaker, didn't they?
Well, yeah, I mean, poor old Michael Forsyth, Lord Forsyth, who only became the Lord Speaker about 3 weeks ago, and his first actions, in fact, were to announce that Lord Mandelson was in deep trouble, has ended up, again inadvertently, being involved in this because I think the Met told Peter Mandelson's lawyers that he was the fount of this information. Yeah. So they've had to apologise to him. They've then, as I say, revealed that it was Lindsay Hoyle, and now they've apologised to him about it. And, you know, Peter Mandelson still, of course, protesting his innocence in relation to this, but the suggestion seems to be that this tip-off from Lindsay Hoyle sparked the arrest, which happened at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, which people seem to think was quite unusual, which meant, of course, that Lord Mandelson was there till very late at night before he was, having been arrested, he was released.
in
as
the
I say,
early hours, wasn't he? And
yes,
the first thing he
yes.
did was to message his journalist friends, because he's absolutely fuming, because he said that he was prepared to go in later on this month. I think they'd arranged, which is the normal
March,
process.
I think they said that he was going to go in, yeah.
Which would be the normal process, and that's what I'm interested about that with Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, because presumably they would have requested him to go in voluntarily and talk at some point. So I'd be interested to know what happened there, that they felt an arrest had to be made. Again, I always ask questions where there aren't any answers.
I think a bit of this, though, is remember that there were searches took place as well in both of Mandelson's houses and at Sandringham, and I think in one other place. So
Norfolk.
So it's I think so. But so it's kind of slightly more complicated than them just being arrested.
Yeah, no, it is very. But this is hugely embarrassing for the police, because they rely on sources. And if they can't be trusted to keep their names private, they're going to be in a world of pain. This is a very depressing story. Doubling the cash for the NHS had no impact. Ex-Tory minister admits that handing an extra £100 billion to the health service was a waste of money, and in fact had no impact on the nation's health.
So this is ex-Tory minister, Health Minister James Bethell, who has made these claims that doubling the money in the health service has had no impact in terms of either the productivity in the health service or the outcomes in terms of the health outcomes for patients in the health service. I have to say, I'm slightly sceptical of this on the basis that, you know, right in the middle of course, was COVID. And a huge amount of money obviously had to be spent on COVID.
That's
and one
true.
wonders if you know, the amount of money that's extra money that's been spent over the 17-year period he's talking about hadn't been spent, what the results would have been, to be honest. But you know, where he has a fair point, I think, is that whole thing about productivity in the health service, which I think is something that certainly since COVID is not improved or got back to, like many other areas of the public and the private sector, has not got back to pre-COVID levels. I always find this really interesting as a question, because I just think that political parties in government you know, make lots and lots of promises. I think a very simple promise that governments could make, whether that's the UK government, devolved governments around the country, is, you know, our first step should be to try and get things back to pre-COVID levels, which we haven't even done yet, rather than attempting to promise the earth that sometimes they do. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, it's just too much when they overpromise and underdeliver. It would be better to underpromise and overdeliver, I would have thought, at that point. And the other story, alignment with the European Union is where the magic happens, the business secretary said. This is Peter Kyle, argued that British public was no longer nostalgic for Brexit and backed the government's reset.
Yeah, so he's off to Brussels, or he might be in Brussels now for a couple of days. I think he's there to talk about competition law. He says the big prize, though, is to get involved in something called the Made in Europe scheme, which is an EU scheme which freezes out British companies and British businesses from EU supply chains, which is obviously very important. But I think, you know, he's reflecting the general tone and tenor that you get from Starmer's government. You know, we're caught between a rock and a hard place. We're in difficulties with America for Trump reasons, I suppose, more than anything else. We don't have the relationship because we left the EU with Europe, and somehow or other we need to develop new relationships and different relationships. Nobody's suggesting that we go back into the EU, but something that can at least give us some access to markets, and also some kind of deals and arrangements, so that, you know, the growth that the UK government keeps talking about can happen.
Yeah, and it seems unlikely that, given the changing world, both economically and militarily, that we could survive out on our own. I mean, we're better in company, certainly in terms of defence. So I can imagine seeing us signing lots of deals that might cost us a lot of money, but in order that we're not just this little island on our own, right?
Well, yeah, and you know, that was the case before Trump, but you know, post-Trump, the world is changing. You know,
and it'll take a long time to change back if it ever does. So we've got to be ready for that.
It may not change back, and you know, there's also what kind of relationship are, you know, Starmer was in China the other week. What kind of relationship do we have with countries like China? What kind of relationship do we have with emerging countries like India? We're in a real kind of limbo at the moment, and you just get a real sense that I think, you know, Starmer wants to go in the direction of greater ties with Europe, but he's not somebody that's exceptionally popular and people trust in terms of any of his motivations, and that's just the way it is at the moment.
No. And also he never tells us what he's thinking, so we have no idea. Let's have a look at the Daily Mail. The Prince of Darkness is the Prince of Darkness up to his old spin tricks. Police probe descends into farce as officers reveal common speaker was source of tip-off. So they think this is Mandelson pulling the strings, which wouldn't be surprising.
Yeah, it wouldn't be. I just kind of think, having read the story, which was the story that we were talking about earlier on, that the headline doesn't really relate to the story. It's a good headline that kind of sits there on its own, and it's trying to imply something about the influence of Peter Mandelson, whereas I think this story is more about the actions of other people and how, well, for example, the Met, for example, are at fault and they've had to apologise, and it was out there anyway about the Lord Speaker. So yeah, a good old headline, but I'm just not sure it relates to the story as much as it might.
The Independent also goes with this story. Speaker tipped off police. Mandelson was a flight risk. He denies, of course, that he was ever going to go anywhere, that he wouldn't go anywhere without his husband and his dog. And I understand that dog thing, right? I wouldn't go anywhere without mine either. And the Guardian... the damning report exposes scandal of NHS maternity unit cover-ups. This is covered on another paper as well, saying that they're falsifying records of baby deaths.
So Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, commissioned Baroness Amos to carry out this review of maternity units. I think it's the Times you're talking about. Found that some maternity units wrongly recorded babies showing signs of life as stillborn, exploiting rules that limit inquests, which is a very, very serious, obviously serious allegation to make. The Guardian talking about falsified records and saying families were denied answers, there was poor care and communication and discrimination as well. And talks about how this whole sector needs wholesale culture change and more investment in order to improve safety. I mean, you know, I think we went through a period where there were lots of individual stories about NHS. This story is about maternity units in England. I don't know if it covers Wales as well, right? But there were lots of individual stories about maternity units, but you know, it seems to be the case that this is much more systematic than that. There's failures right across the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other story on the front is the nuclear deal in reach, says Iran, as talks begin. Iran entering critical talks with the US on its nuclear program, insisting a deal is in reach as long as Washington sticks by its willingness to make concessions. I mean, there was a pretty solid deal in place before that Trump ripped up. I wonder how different this will be. I mean, it's probably going to be pretty much identical.
Well, you know, as you're right, I think this was the deal that Obama made. There was a deal in place. I'm interested again in this story because I feel as if the Iranians have been saying this now for a couple of weeks, whilst the Americans continue to build up their forces in the Middle East. The aircraft carrier, I think somebody said, should just be about there. And
the General Ford.
Yeah,
USS
the threat that Trump is holding out is maybe a bit of a catalyst for this, but we'll just need to see how it plays out even in the next few days.
But it's also interesting with the Trump narrative, you know, saying, what was it, a few months ago, oh, we've completely obliterated, that was the word he used, obliterated their nuclear possibilities. We've obliterated it. And now he's been told that they're minutes away from you know, making weapons of mass destruction. Where have we heard that before? That can reach the UK and then within a few months reach America. I mean, which one is it? Did they obliterate it or did they not obliterate it? And have they got to re-obliterate it?
It's Donald Trump. That was then, this is now.
Yeah.
And again, you know, despite all of this, all of these negotiations going on, this great military build-up that's going on, we are not really quite sure, in reality, what Donald Trump's objectives are.
No, but he's been warned. He's been told now, even by his sycophantic generals that he put in place, that this will kick off a war in the Middle East. Don't do it. You know, this is foolhardy. And I think he's hoping that this show of strength is going to kowtow the Ayatollah. The Ayatollah's not for kowtowing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just not sure that a whole load of people, Trump and the people around about it, understand the culture that they're actually dealing with, the people that they're dealing with, and how they might react to this. But you know, it's an important moment. It might happen in the next, something very serious might happen in the next few days. You've got the Israelis also sitting in the wings, right?
Well, they want this, right?
Yeah.
They want, this is what they want. They want Iran, you know, obliterated, if you like, particularly the Ayatollah. But from, you know, watching what I've seen, you know, with them saying, well, we're prepared to die for this country. And you think, no, what you actually mean is we're prepared for you to die for this country. We're going to be in a bunker somewhere. But there's a lot of big talk coming out of there.
Very dangerous situation.
Yeah, a very dangerous country. I mean, the leadership, right? I mean, they've set up proxy wars all around the, you know, around the Middle East. They've been, you know, threatening the annihilation of Israel. Of course, Israel want to get rid of them.
And all of their allies, of course, in the past couple of years, because of the intervention of the Americans, and the Israelis have just about gone. You know, they've lost the base that they had in Lebanon. Any influence they had over Syria has disappeared.
Yeah.
And in reality, you know, the country's under a great deal of economic pressure as well. They've lost, certainly around about that region, any support and any allies that they had. So it's just, this is a very, very, very difficult and dangerous situation.
It really is. And like you said, I fear that the American under Trump doesn't really quite understand who they're dealing with in that regard. Let's take a quick break. Back in a second.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie, and with me John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. John, let's turn our attention to the Eye. Rachel Reeves has said that Andrew must pay back any misused taxpayer money. Has this got anything to do with the massages that he charged us for?
I think exactly that. Civil servants have said that he charged taxpayers for massages and excessive travel costs when he was working as British envoy. It did say he did the job unpaid, but yeah. So
yeah,
he wants her money back.
Yeah, well, they're just taking the mick at this point, aren't they? Just charging us for massages. I mean, it's ridiculous. The Daily Star, I don't know. I don't know what to say about the Daily Star. Strictly Pete fears apes will take over our planet. Does he? So
a bloke that's been on Strictly, who I think was in a programme called, what was that programme?
The Only Way is Essex.
The Only Way, which I confess
Towie.
I've never watched. I'm very proud of the fact that I've never watched it.
No, I have watched it.
Right, okay. Says that gorillas are going to take over the planet. So, okay then.
Okay.
I'm pleased for him.
Yeah, I don't know.
But it says what I thought was funny was it says that this story has sparked discussions about celebrity anxieties, right? And I'm like, what does that mean?
Really? I mean, do you think he genuinely is anxious that gorillas are... I doubt it. He was probably just telling a joke. But anyway, look, it's the front page of a newspaper, so there we go.
Must be true.
It must be true, absolutely. The Daily Express, just say non. Don't reward French for boats' failure. This is France must get no more taxpayers' money. Would we pay them 700 million a year? Something in that region.
And I mean, it says that MPs, right, so a group of MPs are suggesting that we shouldn't pay the French anymore and stop paying the French. I mean, I'm bound to say, right, rather than make the French go and do something to stop further boats, it would seem to me that this might make the situation worse, that they would be more likely, since they ain't getting paid, to actually turn more of a blind eye to what's happening than they did previously.
They should be paid for every boat they stop, and then they would stop lots of boats, right? If they were paid for every boat they stopped.
If it was a productivity thing.
Yeah,
maybe.
Maybe.
Look, this falls into the box that this is a huge problem that ain't quite as easy as people would have us believe to solve.
No,
right?
and Reform haven't got a handle on it either, despite what they might say. And just very briefly, there was a huge cannabis factory in the centre of Northampton that the police managed to discover. 7,000 plants filled floors of the 4-storey building.
It was a casino in the main street or something in Northampton with 4 stories worth of cannabis plants.
I mean, nobody saw or smelt anything. I mean, these things
people maybe thought it was just a garden centre.
Before I let you go, I have to talk to you about sporrans. Tell me about this story.
Look, nothing is exciting, right, as we've discussed before. People in Scotland, mostly men, to be honest, in the forthcoming, World Cup. There's been the big row about tickets and all that. There's a bloke, right, who's been on telly all day, who's walking from Los Angeles to Boston, the same guy who walked from Scotland to Germany from the Euros. So there's loads of these stories, right? But people south of the border won't have realised that over the weekend, it appears there were crisis talks between FIFA, the international football body that's running the World Cup, and the Scottish Football Association, because sporrans are too big to be allowed into the stadiums that Scotland is playing at during the World Cup. So basically...
Is that just Scottish men showing off? Or?
Well, the only bags that people are going to be allowed to take into these stadiums are like half the size of a sporran. So the Scottish fans, according to the Scottish Sun, were faced with the prospect of leaving the sporrans at the gate of the stadium, right?
I mean, shocking.
Anyway, after the crisis talks, it's all been solved, so we can all be happy. Anybody who's going can take their sporrans and proudly wear them going into the football.
I mean, it's cultural dress, so anybody else would be allowed, I guess. What do you keep in a sporran? It is just a handbag, right? It's a hip bag.
Yeah, well, I mean, people sometimes keep hip flasks in their sporrans, right? But I think this is the reason for people not being allowed to take sporrans into the game, or for security reasons. I mean, the prospect of somebody like hiding some C4 or a bomb or something.
Well, they just have to have
a revolver in their sporrans.
Their sporrans checked. Let's just hope that they don't check what they're wearing underneath the kilt.
Well, that's probably right.
Yeah. Let's just hope that doesn't happen. John, it's good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. John Boothman, a political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. Right, stay where you are, because it's over to you with Talkback next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. It is Talkback, and it is exactly what it sounds like. It is your opportunity to do just that. It is your opportunity to talk back. This is a full hour of just us having a conversation, and it is my favourite part of the show. Whatever it is we end up talking about, I always come away with more information than I came into the conversation. So I do rely on you. I love it. I want to talk to you. So please do pick up the phone. And if you're a first-time caller, don't be nervous. It's all very friendly here. You get a lovely answer in the phone, and then you get put through to me, and we'll just have a nice chat. What I want to talk to you about this morning is this story where we're seeing a nearly 10% rise in fly tipping over the last year, and the cost to councils is absolutely staggering. It is mostly household waste. Over 90% of it is household waste. And I think it's because people don't know what to do with their household waste, right? I know it's our responsibility. I get it. It is down to us to be responsible. But I don't know whether we hold all the blame, because if you're living and say you're broke, right, completely broke, where every penny matters, and there are a lot of people in this country at that level at the moment, and you need a new fridge, right? And so you buy a fridge, or you get a fridge on tick. So you pay it off in instalments, right? You don't have enough money to buy that fridge in one go. But you've now got 2 fridges. One of them works, one of them doesn't. And you need to get rid of the one that doesn't. And the people delivering your fridge say, well, we'll take the other one away for 50 quid. And you can't afford that 50 quid. So you go, no, it's all right, I'll deal with it myself. You also can't afford to phone the council and ask the council to come pick it up, because they'll charge you anywhere. In Bedford, I think it's 55 quid for 3 items. And I know that because I was talking to one of my producers this morning who lives in Bedford when we were discussing this story. For me, it's 10 items for 30 quid. So I think that's quite decent. What I tend to do is try and ask all the neighbours if they've got anything they want to get rid of, and we make it up to 10 items and then get rid of it. But what if you haven't got that money? What do? Well, you either pay somebody a tenner to take it away, or dead of night, you take it out of your flat, you take it down in the lift, and you dump it. So, although we are responsible, are we to blame when I think councils make it expensive and they make it difficult? I mean, it's now difficult to go to the tip. I used to just, be able to do my favourite thing, which is I'm a bit obsessive about getting rid of stuff. I don't like stuff. I mean, somebody visited my house once and said, are you moving out? And I went, no. Why? We haven't got anything. So, oh no, this is how I like to live. That was before I got dogs. But, so I like getting rid of stuff. And I used to be able to just load it into my Mini, drive it to the local tip and dump it, right? It's not so easy anymore. They closed that tip down to build flats on the land. And now I have to drive for about 40 minutes, having made an appointment, to drop things off. And if you're late for that appointment, you can't go in. So you have to drive all the way home and then make another appointment and drive it all the way back. It's not green, it's not environmentally friendly, but at least I have a car, so I can do that. Thousands of people, millions of people don't have cars. I certainly can't afford them in London, right? It's so expensive to have a car in this city, probably is in every city. Parking permits, you name it. Driving through congestion zones or whatever zones they want to throw at you, tickets that you get for driving on roads you've driven on 1,000,000 times before and suddenly they've banned it. So you get another fine. So it is very expensive. What if you're a young couple, you don't have a car, you can't afford a car, you use line bikes or whatever. So there's a lot of people who are stuck, not because they're deliberately nasty, horrible, filthy people, but because they don't really have any other choice. And I think that's where the problem is, that councils have stripped us of choices, that it is difficult, actually, if you get a new mattress, for example. If I got a new mattress, I'd have to pay for somebody to come and pick up my old mattress, because I certainly can't get that in the back of a Mini. I've tried. You'd be amazed what I can get in the back of a Mini, but a double mattress, no, not going to happen. So what do? And then, luckily, I'm in a position where I can, begrudgingly, paying council tax, I will pay to have things collected. What if you can't? What do? And this is why we're seeing a rise in household waste just being dumped. Dumped in your street, dumped in my street. There's always a little pile at the end of my street. I don't know why people have selected that particular piece of the street. And we don't know who they are either. If you've got a car, you've really got no excuse. You should really just drive it to your tip, even if it is 40 minutes away, and that's what I have to do. But whose fault is it that we're seeing this level of a rise in household waste? And what is the solution? Because it isn't, it seems, in prosecuting people, because nobody gets prosecuted. 0.2% of people get prosecuted for this. And a lot of the councils now are turning to the household, where they find a prescription bottle, for example. Maybe you pay somebody 50 quid to take your stuff away, and they dump it in a street, 2 streets away from you, and the council come knocking at your door with a fine for £1,000. So a lot of this system isn't working, and it seems like it should be a lot easier. So give me a call. Let me know. What's it like around your area? What have you done as a community? Have you pulled together? Do you get a skip once every 6 months and let everybody fill it with whatever you've got going on? That would be quite a sensible idea, wouldn't it? But then again, in my street, you'd have to pay for the parking spaces to be made available. You'd have, oh God, it's just too complicated. It's complicated, right? It shouldn't be so difficult. So listen, give me a call. Let me know about what goes on in your area and what it costs you to have waste taken away, and how people deal with it. 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at national rate, but we do call you straight back. And text me, if you will. Some great texts coming in, actually, some really, really good ones. Text the word talk and then your message to 87222. Let's go to your calls now. And Kevin is a first-time caller from Gloucester. Hi, Kevin. What do you make
Good morning,
of this?
Petrie.
Good morning. Good to speak to you.
I was going to say, how do you unpick it? I own a house clearance business, a waste clearance business, so I'm the man in a van who comes to your house and takes away your rubbish. So I charge you. I've then got to dispose of that rubbish legally.
Yeah.
And it's the cost that we pay. And when I spoke to your producer, I think I shocked him. Because we pay, and that's us, not the person we're picking it up from, but we pay £30 for a single mattress.
Whoa!
We pay £40 for a double mattress. How much is a fridge? I've got a...
Oh, yeah, tell me what a fridge is.
A fridge small, £65 per unit. A fridge large, £75 per unit.
No way!
And yesterday, which is funnily enough, I went to a corner shop, small shop, kind of serving just a small suburb in Cheltenham, and the man there had 3 old fridges which didn't work, so they're considered commercial fridges, and the cost that I pay to dispose of those is £200 per unit.
Per unit?
3 fridges were £600 to dispose of. Now, you tell me how he can afford to dispose of those fridges.
That is absolutely mind-blowing. I had no idea it was that expensive.
It's regulations, it's laws, it's... waste is expensive to get rid of. And
so he would have paid the £600 plus your fee?
Plus my fee of taking it away.
And then VAT as a service?
And plus VAT, yeah.
Plus 20% on top of that. So you're probably looking around £1,000, maybe more?
Not far off,
Not far off £1,000.
For 3 commercial fridges, basically ice cream fridges.
Yeah, I know, the chest fridges, I know the ones you mean,
yeah. But commercial fridges are extremely expensive. There's a lot of regulation behind them. We've got to use consignment notes, which mean basically that there's a trail from where I pick it up right the way through to where it ends up at. But all of that has got to be paid for. So everyone is putting a markup right the way through into where it ends up, where it gets degassed and where ultimately it gets scrapped. And that's why the cost to me, and that's, I'm not going to name them, but that's who I have to go through locally in Gloucestershire in order to dispose of that appliance.
And is that pretty much standard across all councils, would you know? Is that pretty much the standard cost?
Yeah, I was going to say there'll be regional kind of variations, but not a great deal. But again,
wow, I mean, I'm looking at
just incredible.
But that, like you said, did he actually? Yeah, he did. So
to.
But if he didn't want to, he could have got a mate with a van, and loaded them up, driven them just to the.
I mean, my labour charge. But what is it? To pick up 3 fridges, it's not a big job. It takes me 10, 15 minutes plus the drive to get there. So what's my labour charge? £100. So if I was unscrupulous, what we've decided is probably not far off. Well, let's say £900, £1,000 comes down to £100 labour, plus the balance of it is cost of disposing with it, and there is no way around it.
So if you were, so this is why there's so much money in this business. So if you were a
Well,
crook,
for certain people, someone somewhere is making a lot of money, and it certainly isn't me.
because you're doing the right thing. And this is what I get so annoyed about, is that when we do the right thing, we're almost punished for doing the right thing, and those people who do the wrong thing get away with it. So you could have cleared you could have pocketed nearly £1,000 well, you could have pocketed 600 quid.
I could have pocketed 750, £800, and if I wasn't to deal with it legally, and that's the important thing. But my double mattress, £40. So the council locally here in Gloucester will pick up your mattress, but it's got to be outside. There's at least a 2-week wait, possibly 3. So what about the old lady who I go to, or the young mother, or the person who isn't able to get the mattress out from upstairs, drag it down the stairs, put it outside the door, leave it there for 3 weeks, and pay the equivalent of £30 through the council? What option have they got? They phone me. But I'm starting off that when I deal with it, when I take it to where we have to take it to, I'm paying £30, and that's a single mattress. £40 for a double. So you imagine a house clearance. You imagine the cost of disposing of an entire house worth of furniture. I could frighten you.
That is extraordinary.
How much does a beanbag cost me to get rid of? Sorry.
A beanbag? I'd say a tenner?
18. But it can't go into landfill. So there are regulations called POPs, and POPs basically are a plastic. And it was a plastic which was introduced to make things non-flammable.
Right, yeah.
So we use it for a safety point of view. So kind of upholstered chairs, armchairs, sofas, all contain POPs, whatever that means. But
so it's doused in chemicals that are dangerous to the environment.
Basically. Yeah. So what that means now is that has got to be incinerated. It can't go into landfill, which is probably a good thing. But all waste transfer stations, because they've got to incinerate it, will make it as being a prohibited product or a more difficult product to deal with. It can't just go into a pile. It's got to be kept separate. And kind of my list here for kind of small items says dining chairs, computer chairs, bean bags, footstools and cushions. And I know of a situation recently where a teddy bear was returned to someone because it's considered to be a POP. So if you follow the letter of the law completely right through, a teddy bear will cost £18 to get rid of, with regional variations.
Honestly, I had no idea that those costs were so high. I mean, and it is no surprise, really, then, that people are thinking, right, well,
exactly.
we can quote for that. And it makes me look at my 300 quid to have my garden cleared a little bit more favourably.
Quite reasonable.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I mean, you know, let's hope, well, they did. They told
No, I saw their licence. Yeah, and I used a professional company. I checked them before, because it was a big
you can
big
do
job.
online.
Yeah.
So all of your viewers and so on should, you know, and listeners should ensure that what they deal with is dealt with properly, but then it comes to the expense of doing that.
Yeah.
Landfill tax, another thing. Landfill tax has just gone, or will go up this year. Now, landfill tax is £136 as from April of this year. That means that when I take something somewhere which goes into landfill, the person who I'm giving it to, who I'm passing over the responsibility of that waste to, if they were to put it in landfill, for every tonne that they put in, costs them £135.
So
That's landfill tax. When landfill tax first came in, it was £7. And I think that was about 20 years ago. In fact, it was, yeah. So I've kind of, again, got my figures in front of me. Landfill tax, 2020, £94.15. Now, that goes to Her Majesty's kind of HMRC or whoever. That's where that money is paid to. £94.15 for every tonne of waste that goes in the ground. and it's now going up this year, April 2026, to £130.75.
Wow.
So when I pay £200 to dispose of it, the place I'm taking it to, if they're putting it into landfill, are but they're earning £70 per tonne. So again, your garden clearance, if you come all the way down the hierarchy as to what you pay, and maybe they took away half a tonne, and ultimately it kind of ends up kind of down the chain, and if it goes into landfill, that's a tax, £130.75.
Oh my goodness. I'm absolutely blown away by this. I mean, you can see, it's so obvious, isn't it, why people break the law, because they can make a lot of money.
In plain sight, Petrie. That's what I find. How's today been? Today's been a busy day for me, phone call wise, because of all the publicity.
Right.
So in a way, fly tipping for me, as soon as it appears on the media, my phone will ring more often because people are conscious of it.
Yeah.
Yesterday, they would have gone to somebody, they would have phoned me, I would have quoted £150 to take away a certain amount of waste for them. They would have immediately gone on social media. They would have found a bloke with a van, kind of dodgy Dave, who kind of quite happy to take it away for 50 quid. And he probably would have gone maybe even to the council tip, which sounds okay, but it's still illegal. It's undermining genuine firms like mine.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're battling against all of these crooks, and because you're doing the right thing. But what should the councils do? I mean, it seems to me that they're just ripping you off.
Yeah, they should see a value in the waste. In this country, we do not see waste as a commodity, which is what it should be. One of the places where we tip waste, so a kind of waste transfer station, so we collect it from the customer, we take it on to someone else to dispose of the waste in a lawful way, they shred that waste and they export it to Scandinavia. 2 miles up the road, there's a from waste site which they could burn it, but it's actually cheaper to send it out to Scandinavia. And in Scandinavia, certain kind of towns have got, it's almost like a district kind of energy from waste scheme which generates power. So the equivalent would be, say, West London. You live in West London. Yep. That's somewhere in West London, in Shepherd's Bush. If it was as local as that, there would be a very small energy from waste, kind of basically an incinerator generating electricity.
See, I'd love that.
That all of your waste would go to.
I would love that, because at the moment, this is the other thing, I think people don't feel connected, because we often see that our recycling and, and the household rubbish go into the back of the same van. They probably end up in the same place, and we feel like we're not connected to it. If we thought that was going to go to a local, incinerator and actually provide, even if it didn't provide electricity and heating for me, but it did for homeless people, or it did for people on, poorer people, I'd be delighted with that. I'd be thrilled with that.
But the rubbish has got, it's got a value. I mean, again, the irony kind of local here is that it costs more money for my local council to take it to a local firm here, a local incinerator, which generates electricity, than what they were paying in landfill before. They're paying more money. The council, Cheltenham, Gloucester, Tewkesbury and Stroud, are paying more money to dispose of basically the waste that comes out of a dust cart to be burnt to generate electricity than what it would cost for them to put it in a big hole on what people would call a tip or a landfill site. And yet that works out more expensive. And the company who we use, a private company, find it cheaper to put it on a lorry down to the docks, to go on a boat to Scandinavia, to where it then ends up somewhere.
And they use it for electricity.
And they use it, and they generate electricity, and their electricity bills are far lower than ours, apparently.
This makes me so cross.
It's an outlook. But we view waste as, we make it difficult. It's a liability to the council So your council, I would say, in your area, are subsidising waste.
Yeah.
Because it's absolutely impossible to dispose. Anyone who gets charged £30 for 10 items or £50 for 10, it's absolutely impossible
to
deal with that. So your council is subsidising it. And then, say, Ealing, where you say there's a problem.
Oh, real problem.
My guess would be that they're not subsidising it, they're ignoring it, they're pretending it doesn't exist, because if they go out and pick up that fridge freezer, they're not able to deal with it. They have to send it on to be processed elsewhere.
And that costs them a couple of £100 or £100.
Yeah, so we'll ignore it. We'll pretend it doesn't exist. We'll leave it on the street. Hopefully somebody else will take it. But they won't. Nobody wants a fridge. Nobody wants a freezer. If I put a cooker out on the road where I live, the cooker would disappear because it's got a value. It's got a value as scrap. But a fridge freezer is a liability because it contains gases, and nothing can happen to it legally until those gases are extracted. And that's the expense.
I don't know how you're surviving, Kevin.
Well, it's in one respect, days like yesterday or kind of the conversation we're having now will help. Because
it will help, because I've learned, I mean, this is what I love about this phone-in, is I've learned that the cost is huge for you guys. So I'm never going to be quite as hacked off as I was.
The only people who can afford me are the people who can afford me.
Yeah.
But I mean, if I deal, and quite often I will get a call, I don't know, from somebody, and she's just had a spring clean, or the family have just had a spring clean. They've just got rubbish. That's how they describe it to me. It's just rubbish. What have you got? Well, I've just got rubbish. It would fit in the back of a transit van. It's old kiddies' toys. It's, the child's too old for the garden slide now, so we've got rid of that. We've got rid of a high chair. All of that. And that kind of rubbish, for me, for argument's sake, I might estimate that it's going to be £150 for me to take that away. £150, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
That could be half of someone's salary for the week.
Yeah. It is a lot of money. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's just for, 2 weeks in a van to kind of turn up and take away their waste for them. And people don't see the value in that, which I understand. So the only people who, in a sense, do use me are people who probably are a bit more affluent, who don't want the hassle of, kind of hiring their own van and going to their own household tip, even though you need to make an appointment and it's made difficult.
So annoying, yeah.
But it's made difficult by the councils because they don't want the waste. Someone who's listening to this, someone who works for a council, phone up Petrie and say, we want the waste, because it just won't happen. Waste is a liability. Waste is expensive.
So they're deliberately making it difficult for us, but then they're having to pay to clear it up.
But are they? It's in plain sight, Petrie. There is a main A road in Gloucester that I can drive down pretty much any day of the week, and there will be a bonfire in a field, and there are vans turning up to it.
No.
Plain sight, absolute A road. Even with everything that's in the news at the moment, I could drive down there tomorrow on my way to Cheltenham. There'll be a bonfire. Like, surely my local councillors can see it sat in their office or their homes or wherever they're working from at the moment. But nothing. This has gone on for years. And less than a mile away from that is a legal fly tip. It was kind of all over the news at Christmas. But where does that come from? It's coming from people who are advertising on social media, who are going out and they're undermining legitimate people like me, and they're charged. And I'm like you. I can see why.
I think that we're responsible, but often, like I keep saying, and not to blame. Kevin, I'm going to get you to mention your company, because I'm a very kind person.
Well, it's very kind, but if anyone needs waste moving anywhere in Gloucestershire, call County Clearance.
County clearance.
County clearance.
And you'll get Kevin, who's a good, decent, honest bloke. So make sure
You're very kind, Petrie. Thank you.
Well, no, you're very kind. I mean, honestly, I've learned so much. Honestly, it's been brilliant. So thank you for calling, Kevin, and do call again. County clearance. That's who.
County clearance in Gloucestershire.
County clearance in Gloucestershire. Make sure you give Kevin a call. I've got to take a break, so I'm really late.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good morning to you. I'm blown away by what Kevin said. I had no idea that they pay so much to do it officially. And it's no surprise, is it, really, that this has become a massive criminal enterprise. And also, he's opened my eyes to the fact that perhaps that's why there are very low prosecutions as well, because councils don't want the rubbish. They don't want to deal with it because they have to pay to get rid of it as well. It's really interesting. I literally had no idea that's how much it costs to get rid of a fridge or a freezer or a commercial fridge. 200 quid per go. Chris has sent a message saying, regarding rubbish collection, I think this is another case of council, civil servants and bureaucrats, let's call it the blob, being unable or unwilling to conceive of negative and unintended consequences of their convoluted policies. Completely agree. That's pretty much what Kevin was saying. Lower income folk without a car or disposable cash will have to take the cheaper option. The council charges 45 quid for a collection. Well, why not pay 25 quid to a local man with a van who tells you he'll take it all away for you? He fly tips, you assume it's all above board, and then years later, it's a £20 million to clear out river of rubbish. As with every other part of life, make the positive action cheap and easy, and people will gravitate towards it. Economics doesn't care about virtue. I think that's absolutely brilliant. And I do think that if people did have a cheap or free option to get rid of rubbish, like I said, a skip in the area once a month that's going to be there for 2 days, you've got 2 days to drag it out of your house and put it in the skip at the end of your road, and then it's picked up and taken away by the council. That's got to be cheaper than mucking around with enforcement officers and all of that kind of thing. But the will isn't there. Clearly, because that would be the cheaper option, right? So what Kevin was saying rings true in that case, because it seems that they don't have the will to let us get rid of rubbish, cheap or free, and easy. There's something else going on, isn't there? And as Chris said, there's all the, I mean, and the cost to do that stuff as well. Somebody's making a hell of a lot of money out of this rubbish. Martin said, around here in Southport, a van driver is not allowed to go to the recycle centre unless he has a permit. a decorator I know of says that he can only get 3 permits a year. So what are they supposed to do with tins and etc.? Perhaps the answer is for the recycle centres to open their sites for commercial waste rather than stopping them. And that is the other thing, isn't it? In these big mountains of waste, you often see lots of things like paint tins and things like that, because they're the things that are really difficult to get rid of. There's something going on. There's something not right about this, and yet it's, you know, it costs the councils millions of pounds. That river of rubbish that Chris mentioned there, £20 million it's going to cost to clear it, because it's just become a dumping site and allowed to be. There it is there if you're watching on television. I can't remember which motorway it was next to. I think it was the M40. Can't remember. I think it was M40. Yeah. So that's around about near where I am actually. But yeah. So that's that river of rubbish. £20 million. That's going to cost the taxpayer to get rid of. I mean, look at the size of it. I'm sorry if you must have seen it if you're listening on radio. It is absolutely massive. It's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And every single item there that's been fly tipped, somebody has paid a couple of quid for, and somebody's pocketed it. And yet you've got decent, law-abiding people like Kevin, and they're not doing that, but they're finding it very difficult to make a living because of the hundreds of thousands of people that are. It just seems so wrong, so wrong. Heather is on the line now from South Ayrshire. Hello, Heather. It's been a while.
Hey, it's been too long.
It has. Really. How are you?
Oh, I'm getting by.
Well, we all are.
Well, I've been talking to your producer about sentencing these criminals who do it illegally to send them to prison for 5 years. And after that 5 years, if they still do it after they've been released from prison as a repeat offender, send them to prison 10 years with community, community, what's that word? Community work.
Service.
Community service, yeah. And they should be doing that as well.
The trouble is that sending these people...
punishment as well.
Sending these people to prison for a year, it costs us over 50 grand a year.
Well, they should pay the price of the crime and do the time, because it's a criminal offence what they're doing. This is absolutely diabolical, and no wondering why. Do you know when you pay? Do you know when you and Kevin was talking about tax?
The cost of it all.
Well, you're already paying tax for your council tax.
Yeah.
And that council tax pays the bin men to collect the rubbish. And they should be doing their jobs properly. And it's down to these county councils or metropolitan councils to pay these waste disposals, these bin men, a lot more better than they are doing to make sure that these rubbish gets collected every fortnight or every week. I mean, I live in Girvan, and our rubbish gets collected every fortnight, every Thursday fortnight, and it's always guaranteed when it comes to that Thursday, the bin man arrives, and our bins. I live in a block of flats in Girvan, and our communal bin gets emptied. And the Scottish system is far more better than the English system in collecting waste.
Yeah, it seems to be. I mean, I at least get a collection every week for household waste. I don't produce much in the way of household waste, to be honest. But I do get that. The recycling and the bins are picked up on the same day. But but still, if you've got big things you need to get rid of, that's where the problem lies. Because you know, getting somebody to lug it onto the street, and then it can't. If you leave it on the street too long, you get done for fly tipping, even though you've asked the council to come and pick it up. So it does get really complicated. You can be fined for leaving it out for too long. But I think that there needs to be stiffer penalties. I'm not sure prison's the answer, but I think these people, it's money. That's what motivates
should
them.
Be a tougher sentence to make them realise if you do it, you go to prison.
Yeah, there's not, but only 0.2% of people end up being prosecuted. 0.2.
That's ridiculous. That's disgusting. That's pure damn laziness of the courts and the system. No wonder why the system sucks in England and wherever. I mean, it's diabolical. I mean, I've been listening to both you and Kevin saying about reusing,
recycling stuff.
Recycling waste for energy. You can do that with, food wastage and human wastage and animal wastage for methane, for gas, for heating.
I know, we should be, I mean, that's what Kevin was saying, that what we need to be doing is seeing value in waste and using it and reusing it to make sure that we can bring energy prices down. See, that's sustainable as well, right? Food waste would be sustainable.
Could be a cheaper energy for our gas.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and I think that is there's a lot of sense about that, but there needs to be greater fines. Listen, I've got to take a break. Back in a second.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, this is Talk and it's Petrie, and this is Talk Back. And we're talking rubbish this morning. We're talking about the amount of waste that is fly-tipped in this country. And it is absolutely disgraceful and relentless. I mean, if anybody who's got a farm or anything like that, they're just saying that they're getting things like tyres, asbestos, furniture, household rubbish, and even dead dogs, dead animals thrown onto their land, and the farmers have to then pay to get all this stuff recycled and taken away, and it's costing them thousands of pounds a month to do that. That big river of rubbish that has made the news a lot recently, that's going to cost £20 million to clear up. And fines for illegal dumping have decreased over the past year, with only 0.2% of all incidents resulting in court action. Not even 0.5%. Not even 0.5%. Fly tipping incidents across England have reached the highest level since current records began, with offences continuing to involve household waste. In 2024 to 25, 1.26 million fly tipping incidents were recorded by local authorities, an increase of 9% on the 1.15 reported the year before. These figures show the equivalent of 142 monster landfills a day. Let me just tell you that again. These figures show the equivalent of 142 monster landfills a day take place. Despite a rise in fly tipping, the data also reveals that the number of court fines decreased from 1,378 down to 1,250, with only, as I said, that 0.2% of incidents resulting in any court action. It's a national crisis. 142 monster landfills a day is being fly tipped in this country. They've just got to make it easier. They've just got to make it easier and cheaper so people can do the right thing. People want to do the right thing. I believe that. Most of us want to do the right thing. So why not make it easier to do that? Sarah's in Liverpool. Morning, Sarah.
Good morning, Petrie.
How are you today, all right?
Not too bad.
Good.
But talking about rubbish, and fly tipping in particular, I'm sick to death of it. Where I live, it's words fail me because we've got 3 lots of people who fly tip. Now, the locals do their best. If they've got anything that that can be recycled, they take it down the charity shops. And luckily, we've got the local recycling centre just down the road from where we live, so it's not so bad. However, we've got landlords who I will call fly-by-night landlords. They like to have short-term lets. They do not bother to, they just don't bother with the rules. When tenants leave, usually on a Section 22, they take as much stuff as they can because they're basically being told, get out or else. And anything that's left, what does the landlord do? Do they get a skip and sort and put it all in the skip? Or do they sort out the stuff that can be recycled and do it that way? No. They go and they put it all out in the backyard. They put it in the backyard and then it goes into the alleyways. And if anyone had to get up and down there, if there was a fire or whatever, and the fire brigade had to get up, the only way they could get out at the fire is through the back, they would be stuffed.
So you're talking about the ginnels at the back of the back of houses. So when two back gardens back onto the little alleyway, it's called a ginnel, I think. Yeah. It's
a ginnel in some parts. We just call it a back alley.
Right.
Or another word for it in Liverpool is a jigger. But we have some very odd words. We have many words for one thing, believe me.
That.
Anyway, but that's just one lot. I mean, you just go, because you just open the back door. Say if you swirl the yard or something, you open the back and you go, oh no, here we go. The fly-by-night landlords are at it again. Everything out in the back, and you go, oh lovely. And they try and blame the actual tenants. And we all know it's them who's thrown it out because the tenants have gone, because we've seen it so often. Then you've got the ones
disgusting, isn't it? They should all be prosecuted. I don't know why it's so difficult.
They don't get. I mean, the locals, they're forever on at the council. Will you clear the alleys? Will you clear the alleys? I mean, it took them last year. We actually saw people clean them. I went, whoa, we're seeing things. And within about a week, the landlords and some locals were at it again, and you go, oh God, here we go. And you're on the phone again, and it's going to be another year before they ever get round to doing it. People have been screaming and shouting about it. That's just one lot. The next lot are the ones from the more salubrious suburbs of Merseyside who follow the main drag down into Liverpool city centre. And on the way in, what do? They dump their stuff. And You wouldn't. I mean, some of it you just go, oh please, do you have to leave it on the corner of the street?
Yeah.
Thank you. Or then to be crafty, especially if they're doing it round about dawn, they usually leave it right by one of the alley, the access to the main back alleys, and you just go, oh, here we go. You've left stuff again, have we? And you look at it and you just go, oh, thanks a lot. Although some of the things you find can be rather interesting, like a brand new top-of-the-range barbecue, but it's had a bit of dust on it, so they throw it out. There's been a few other neighbours who've gone, well, one man's rubbish.
Absolutely.
We're going to recycle that.
Bit
Thank
of
you very much.
recycling, yeah.
I mean, I've even seen garden benches, and you go, oh, come on. So there's quite a few of the locals who've gone, well, we're recycling that. But the other lot, who are the absolute scumbags, and this is where it comes to the industrial size fly tips, which you see in the countryside. You also see quite large ones most people see them in urban areas, and they're the ones who are caused by the local godfathers, the organised crime groups. What they do is they say that oh, by the way, we'll take away your rubbish, Mrs. Sir, and they go, okay, thanks. They say, oh yeah, we've got a waste carrier's licence, which has been forged, and then people get it taken away supposedly in good faith, only to find that their stuff that they've, whatever it is, their rubbish, be it they've been doing the house out or they just want to get rid of something, has been literally dumped in another suburb or in the countryside, and it's big business for them.
Huge. I mean, just talking to Kevin earlier on, I had no idea. If he'd been a disgrace, if he'd been a criminal, he could have pocketed 750 quid cash in his back pocket and dumped those fridges in the countryside. I mean, that's a lot of money for 10 minutes work, right?
It is, and you would be surprised the amount of people who would do it. I mean,
I think it is
disgusting.
It is, and this is the point. You've got to make the right thing a cheap thing to do, not the most expensive thing to do. Sarah, brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. I've got to go because I've messed up all the breaks, so I've got to take another one.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. It is Talk, and it's Talk Back, and you are doing that, and I am learning a lot. even though it's about rubbish, I'm always curious about everything. That's why I've got this job. I think it's just my curiosity. I love learning new stuff, whatever it is. Tristan, lovely Tristan in Southend, has said Southend City Council gives 5 free bulky item collections per household per year, i.e. a fridge or a bed, sofa, etc. It saves me around £56 a year. That's what I mean. If the right thing is available, then that's what you do. You do the right thing. I don't think it's that difficult. I personally feel, this is from Jackie, says, I personally feel that councils need to listen and work with residents. That's a novel idea. Our county council asked residents to take part in a consultation about introducing a booking system at their recycling centres. 91% of us voted against it. We now have to book to visit recycling centres, so why consult? In my opinion, councils need to work with residents in order for new systems to work effectively. Otherwise, they will only fail. Now, I remember that when it came to the council tax, not council tax, the congestion charge that Ken Livingstone brought in, and he put that out to consultation. Every single one of us, I think it was nearly unanimous, went, no, get stuffed, and he did it anyway. And I remember saying to him, why did you do it anyway? He said, well, because we know better than the public. So and that consultation would have cost us as well. I hate these people. They're so blooming arrogant. They work for us. They forget that, don't they? The only reason they got their job is because we're paying them. Makes me sick. Kevin, good morning.
Morning.
Morning. Another Kevin? Aye.
Yep. We're in the bus.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't mind a Kevin. That's absolutely fine by me. Kevin in Basingstoke. What do you think the problem is here?
Well, the thing is, I mean, I remember years ago when I used to go to, my dad used to go to the tip. Everything was just chucked in one huge big, all chucked in together. There was no recycling or anything.
Yeah.
And it was all taken to landfill. And that was really, really bad for the environment. You know, it ends up in the water table and gets toxic gases coming from it and all that sort of thing. So now there's a lot more regulations. They try to recycle it or recycle a lot more of it. So it's a lot more expensive. I mean, they put the prices up. Stuff that actually goes into landfill that isn't recycled. And there's also there's a shortage of staff as well. So because a lot of EU people used to work in these recycling centres, there's a shortages of them, so they can't stay open so long. They have to pay more wages to try to employ people, and also the equipment that's used in these recycling facilities, that has to be imported, and that cost has gone up a lot because of Brexit as well.
So there's just the huge amount of waste that we produce. I mean, surely we've got to come up with a better system where we're not producing as much waste, and that relies on manufacturers being fined if they don't give us, less packaging or better packaging or packaging that melts away after, 6 months or whatever.
Well, the trouble is, everything we buy eventually will be thrown away, won't it?
Yeah.
So for as much stuff we buy, there is rubbish. So as long as, we're a consumer-based society, we keep buying stuff.
Yeah, true.
There's going to be rubbish, isn't there? Mattresses, carpets. Amazon. You think how much cardboard there must be?
Oh, I know. There was a cardboard shortage about a year ago. Amazon were freaking out. There was literally a cardboard shortage around the world.
Well, yeah. So, until we come up with some method where we can recycle this stuff even better than we are now. I know where I live, they've just started food waste.
Yeah. That's going to be introduced across England. It's supposed to be introduced at the end of March, but a lot of the third of the councils aren't ready.
Oh, well, they're doing it here. I mean, not everybody does it, because when I go out on bin day, there's, I think, probably 60-70% of people doing it. But the thing is, that's now in the winter. I mean, those bins in the summer with all that food waste. I mean, in my kitchen, I hate all those fruit flies.
I can't bear it, Kevin. I can't bear it. And I did try to do the food recycling thing. I mean, I don't have a lot of waste, to be honest with you, but I tried to do that, and then you get maggots, and it stinks. And I was talking to a neighbour who said, what I do is I tie up the bag and put it in the freezer until the day that it goes out. Right, so that's one way of doing it. But then you've got another bag of food. And then the foxes get into the bins.
Yeah.
And they're strewn all over the floor.
We don't get so many foxes where I am.
We're like a David Attenborough special round where I am.
But the thing is, when you say about the maggots, my bin gets maggots in it anyway, like when they used to put it in the big bin. So I suppose there's not really that much difference. But
I can't bear maggots. They're the ones that really, they freak me out.
Yeah.
I'd rather a spider, a snake, a gorilla, a bear, anything, but not a maggot.
Yeah, but you should carry on doing it because they turn that into fuel, biofuel, apparently.
I know, you're probably right, but I just can't bear it. I can't bear the maggots.
Well, you're the same as my son. He says they don't do it either, and I sort of like scour at it.
No, I know I should do it. I know I should do it. I know I should, and they do pick up every week, so it's not like it's that difficult. I'll try to get back into it just for you. All right.
Yeah, okay, cheers, thank you.
I'll try to get back into it just for you, but if I see a maggot, I'm blaming you. If I see a maggot, I'm